Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 66 of the Migtown podcast, your only weekly source for all the dirty things that animals do. And yes, by animals, we talk about German Shepherds. As usual, I'm producer Tim. Joining me is the mayor of Migtown, Drexel. Say hi.
Hello, everybody in the world.
Also joining us in studio today, back from our, you were from the Valen-crimes day call-in, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Busta Nut. Okay, is that the way we're going to call you, or how should we call you?
No, you can actually just call me Vincent. I don't mind.
Vinny?
Yeah, it's all right. However you want to do it. I've already had my real name dropped in one of my own streams, so I don't really care at this point. When it happens, and you can't, look back. But yeah, I don't care, bro. There's nothing that I say that I wouldn't, if it was brought before my family or whatever, I would have no shame. They already know who I am. All my friends know who I am, so yeah.
I mean, we all use our names here, right? Tim, Drex. Point that way. So, I mean, it's all good. So, Vincent, good to have you on the show, man. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, someone who's never heard of you before. What are you all about?
Yeah, what's up? So, yeah, I'm currently a zoology student at HSU. I'm a senior, but at the same time, I've also been a student of the German language, of which I'm C1 certified by the University of Tübingen. And I've already started 2 businesses with my homie Edwin, who I occasionally do podcasts with. And yeah, it's been a pretty fun time. I've been studying animals and getting into different various hobbies from hunting to birding. Basically my entire life, ever since I was 12 and got my hunter safety, I've been really obsessed about the woods. I've been obsessed about nature and animal life, while also maintaining my stance as, trying to be an academic about things, but also acknowledging that at times academia doesn't really have all the answers, and nor does the public at large. So I don't know. I've kind of just been my entire life somebody who's just tried to go with the flow, learn about subjects that interest me like history and philosophy, and use that to shape kind of how I see life, and especially, I guess, considering this podcast, how you see women, how you see other people, and how you just get about in your day-to-day life. So
I'd say you're expertly qualified to offer commentary with the stuff that we see out on TikTok, right? Because this is more animal behavior than it is civilized societal behavior. But don't worry, we'll bring in a sociologist, I think is what she does, or I don't remember exactly what she does, but we'll bring in one of those in too. And it's cool because you can always put names to the stuff that we see out in the wild. Anyways, with intros out of the way, Drex, take it away.
Oh, man, well, there's so much to cover because, like I said, first and foremost, thanks for coming on because it was a delight to have you on for the live stream that we did. One of the things that I find fascinating about your field of study is that there are so many ways to relate the animal kingdom, right, to humans, because I think so often we have this issue as humans. It's kind of like the built-in human megalomania, right? Of I'm not an animal. Humans are above everything. Yet, look at all human behavior, right? And clearly, we are just animals, right? In the same way that you could look at an insect and be like, oh, this is the insect's lifespan. This is what their day-to-day life is, if they live day-to-day or just a matter of hours. But they have a lifespan and they have an expectation and a job to do within their lifespan. Humans are no different, right? If you look at most humans are basically driven by the same things, right?
yeah, these are basic motivations. I mean, if you ask somebody and you say oh, you're an animal, and they say, no, I'm not. My response is, then what are you? You're governed by the same forces that affect animals. A pigeon getting hit by a car, you can get hit by a car too. I don't know. You can starve to death. You can die of thirst. And the best way to get somebody to acknowledge that, I'm drag them out to the woods at 4:30 in the morning, or drag them out to the marsh or to the lake and make them wear waders or no waders. Make them go butt naked. I'm you think that you're above the laws of nature, but you're as beholden to the laws of nature in fundamental ways as every other being. You can't. It's you have to breathe air. You can't not breathe air. You have to breathe air like every other organism. You have to find a way to get oxygen to your bloodstream. Mm-hmm. Also, what you have to do is feed yourself. You can't not eat. You're governed by hunger and driven by hunger, just like most animals are. The only distinction between humans and animals is the fact that we're carrying around the most complex structure in the universe. The human brain is the most complex thing that we know of in reality. And with that, we're able to use reason, and we're able to be inventive and kind of go beyond the laws that are beholden to other less intelligent creatures. But like I talked before, and the last time I was here, different animals will spec into different things. Oh yeah, sure, humans are vastly more intelligent than any other life, but we're inferior when it comes to strength. We're inferior when it comes to the materials that make up our bodies. There are other animals that can survive bone-crushing depths at the bottom of the sea, where even if humans even went a fraction as deep as they did, they would just be made into human water balloons. And there's other animals, like look at a puma, it can jump multiple times its body length. A cougar can clear jump right over whatever fence you try to build to keep it out. It could be Jurassic Park tier, and it won't stop it. We're inferior physically to most other animals, but not mentally. And that just annoys me when people think that that one trait makes us better when all these other traits don't matter. So
I've always thought about that because, I used to always joke about there are certain things that when you look at certain animals and you think to yourself, if you could take the human brain and the human reason and the human problem solving and you could implant it in certain creatures, it would be scary. Like I actually talked about this with when it comes to apes, right? Imagine a silverback gorilla, right? And you took the human reasoning and muscle memory to like lift weights, right? To build up more strength. Could you imagine like an orangutan or something like that, like sitting there like doing reps, like repping out? They're already freakishly strong, right? Freakish strong. Imagine, grizzly bears, right? Black bears lifting weights and like training their body the way a human could. Like people think those animals are scary now, but imagine adding that extra layer to it. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, and I mean, that's kind of what they already do in a lot of ways. They create these animals that once they actually go crazy, end up killing tons of people. Because unlike typical wild animals, like, what are they doing? Oh, this grizzly bear is strong. Let's give him a big-ass tire. Or let's give him a dumpster. And let's give him all these props and balls and toys. So what does the bear do all day? He's just flipping those tires. He's pulling those dumpsters around. And look how big they get. Look at those bears on television versus those bears in the wood. Those bears get 3 square bowls of whatever they get a day. They're on ketogenic diet. Every single one of those bears probably listens to Joe Rogan or something. And they are basically like savages waiting to go wrong. Like, you heard about that chimp. Where was it? I forget what state it was in. But it like went crazy. It was this like Bubbles the chimp sort of thing where they had it and they thought it was a member of the family. And it was a big male chimp. That's an intact male chimpanzee that you're keeping in your house. A creature that belongs in Africa, belongs in its native habitat. And you're keeping it in this unnatural condition. And it mauls them both. It like rips her face off. It rips his junk off. Like, that's the way it is. And people don't get it. It's like you put an animal in a domestic setting, give it the optimal amounts of food, optimal amounts of stimulation. Those animals are extremely more dangerous than any wild animal in the same circumstances. So that's my take too.
Do they ever study that though? In terms of like, what do you do? A lot of the zoologists and psychologists, even like I'm sure there's animal psychologists that kind of break down what is it about these nice, domesticated, cozy environments that causes animals to snap, right?
Well, I think most of the consensus from ethologists, the people who study animal behavior, is that animal psychology is difficult because unlike human psychology, animals can't talk to us. They can give us clues based on their body language. They can give us indicators from their health or physiology, but no cat's going to tell you that it's sick unless it like meows at you and acts all pitiful. You have to infer that for yourself. So there's no like deep diving. It's like, asking the hamster, like, where did the garter snake touch you? Doesn't get you anywhere because at the end of the day, these creatures are living according to their own inbred instincts. And that's what makes them so scary is that when you introduce a wild animal into your home, whether it be a cockatoo or a chimpanzee, you're introducing unknowns. This is a condition that is unnatural. It is unknown how this animal will react. And so anything like the slightest provocation or just a misunderstanding of how the animal truly feels deep down. Like, let's say you don't know that by standing on 2 legs as a human, you're naturally intimidating to a bear. And so you have a bear that, for whatever reason, due to conditioning from birth or just something genetic or, maybe it was influenced by others of its kin and learned behavior, that you walking up to it on 2 legs is terrifying to it. And even though you're one half its size, this massive grizzly bear just mauls the shit out of you and eats your scalp. And too many people like Timothy Treadwell, the bear man, have learned this the hard way by even trying to forge unnatural relationships in the wild. So animal behavior is a field in its infancy, and I don't think anybody can speak with it about any real expertise. So hard to tell.
Well, one of the things that I have written down here that I think is very fascinating is when we talk about with mice, and of course we have like the rat utopia and all those kind of studies, right? And when it comes to that, they are most similar to humans, right? That's why they study behavioral patterns and stuff, and they test things on rats because they go, rats are eerily similar to humans. And my thing is, what do you have to say about that in regards to how they test these things on humans, right? Like, a lot of the drugs and stuff they're tested on rats. How do you feel about that?
So one of the things that makes us different from rats, there's something called RK selection. And it basically just dictates that some animals have strategies at reproduction that either favor making a large amount of offspring for maximum diversity and minimal resource investment versus one where you take a longer time and invest more resources in offspring but get them an individual higher survival rate. So in these mice, the reason that they use them for science is because they breed very rapidly and have short generation times. Our selecting species have short generations. They're like mayflies. Think of a difference between, an elephant and a mosquito. How long does that elephant gestate? It takes just like multiple fly lifetimes. Flies alive for like 31 days. It's like this elephant's pregnant for 2 years. It's the difference is astounding when you get down to brass tacks, but these mice are perfect. They're the perfect culture for us to see, okay, what's the long-term effects maybe going to be with this raw chemical? And then you hopefully move it up to something like a monkey or a chimp or something, and then you kind of like walk it towards a human, because all you're trying to make sure that this drug is doing is not making people horrifically sick, like making everyone in the human trial suffer some horrible adverse effect. You give them that buffer first so that they have a hopefully mostly safe medicine to try. But the issue, again, with lab mice is that, okay, they're very similar to humans, but they're also very not similar to humans. So everything from their circulatory system to their endocrine system, their nervous system, there's many similarities, but where they're different matters the most, especially in the field of immunology. Like, okay, they might be able to safely ingest this medicine, but they realize that the only reason they're able to do that is because of an enzyme specific to mice, for example. Mm-hmm. So you give that to humans, they don't have that enzyme, and the medicine's either ineffective or it makes people horribly sick. So you can't just jump from mice to people. This is why these products by FDA and all this stuff, like those approval processes, those all have to be approved over potentially years of time. So,
well, it's funny you say that. Yeah. I remember years ago when I was in, I want to say it might have been my biology class, but they talked about, one of the things that we see oftentimes in like sci-fi movies is cryo, right? We always see this cryogenics kind of thing, right? We're going to freeze a person and then reanimate them. And I remember my teacher telling me, he's like, yeah, so for those of you who don't know why humans can't do that, it's like when fish freeze, right? They're in water and they freeze. There's something in their blood that allows them to reanimate. Humans simply don't have it. So that's why he's like, yeah, it's cool just to see, right? The whole idea of a human is frozen in cryosleep, and then they just wake up and then shake off the cobwebs, and then boom, I go right back into society 130 years later, right? And he's like, yeah, people have gotten deluded by thinking that, like you said, we can we can kind of take things and pinpoint things that we can snatch from another species and implant it in ourselves, which we can't. But one thing that I do think that is interesting is that I want your take on this. When it comes to animals, what animals do you think our humans could learn something from to be better off?
I think that the ones that we could probably learn the most from are probably marine mammals, because they're still affected by many of the same forces that we are as mammals. They have the physiological similarities that I think would be useful if we were to keep exploring the oceans or just safer ways of, kind of just living in the ocean. Like the monofin was a product of people observing whales and wanting to create a fin or a swimming device that could help them attain higher speeds in the water or higher aerodynamics. But I think it could even be like, okay, what would be the safest places to go if one was like lost at sea and observing like, oh, marine mammals have this and this behavior. It's like, that's just an example. I don't even know. But I think that because of how under-researched, I guess, the entire marine ecosystem is, I'd say that a lot of marine mammals, for everything from whales to, like I said, seals and sea lions, probably have a lot to offer that we just don't know about yet.
Is that why they're always finding like new species, and it seems to only be underwater, right? Like every time they're like, "We found a new species," like you found one. You ever notice that? Like they keep finding a species, but it seems like it's almost always an underwater species.
Yeah, you should actually look up. Recently, they went. Where was it? I think it was like Laos or somewhere. This is the second time I forgot where it was. Talking about it with a friend the other day, but they found like 22 new species, including like a new species of monkey in Southeast Asia. So this is one thing that I'm actually very critical of when it comes to, let's say, surveillance or monitoring in ecology or trying to get head counts in zoology, is that people don't get, again, like I said, like the, what was it, the Timothy Treadwell example or whatever, the bear man example, that people have an influence on nature, that we are a part of nature, and as a result, we are affecting it. When we walk to an area, the birds change their songs. They either stop singing. It's like, this is reported like in the Vietnam War. It was very common for soldiers to listen for the birds going quiet to understand when somebody's entering the area or not. It's like we have an effect on the entire area when we enter it. Just like an elk walks into a clearing and everybody's like, oh, look, there's an elk. The same thing is happening because humans have established themselves as an apex predator. You were talking about the attitudes of different creatures in the food chain earlier. And it's not just us that has these thoughts. It's other creatures too. They recognize the apex predator for what it is, and they react accordingly. So they go into an area, it's like, oh, no new species, or, oh, there's fewer species than last time. But that's not actually true. It's that, because humans have been logging in the area, or because humans have been, trampling around or shooting other things, that animals now realize humans' danger and run away. So that's what they do first. Animals are mobile. And so they'll leave an area before, ever just staying and dying. This idea that, oh, they just stay in fires and die. That's mostly insects. Insects are the highest casualties during brush fires and during the California fires, for example. Those were some of the biggest death tolls that we saw from the fires. People focus on the human deaths, but they don't realize that all the insects getting burned up is probably going to be disastrous for the ecosystem. And so we lost a lot of native birds to not fire, but migration. They just left. They went up to Oregon. They moved to different parts of California and Nevada. But that's just, I don't know. You can't trust it. At times, like, people will say they found a new species, and it won't be. It'll be like a subspecies or a polymorph of whatever. It'll just be a different form. Or it'll be, a species that hasn't been ascribed formally. It was just sitting in a drawer for 60 years. But it does happen.
Well, what do you think? We talked about this before the show. What do you think about when it comes to like behaviors? Because, like you said, when you think about in the animal kingdom, right? You have as we go up the food chain, Tim and I were talking about this. If you are the apex predator, you're kind of sitting back chilling, right? Like, because you aren't nervous because you're thinking to yourself, well, who's going to come to attack me, right? Whereas someone that's mid, which means they got something beneath them and they got something above them. Someone who's much lower is going to be very jittery, right? Because everything is a predator to them, right? What do you think about that in relation to how humans are and versus how other animals are?
Yeah, so this is an example of intra versus interspecies competition. You will see interspecies competition in the form of just like, okay, we're trying to graze on the same ground. Like a rhino will try to chase off a gazelle, and an elephant will try to chase off or even attack a rhino. Even though they might coexist when times are plentiful, if times are hard and food's scarce, otherwise chill creatures will suddenly, go sideways on each other. But as it relates to the animal kingdom, no one's going to try and chase off this giant crocodile chilling on the banks. The elephant or a hippo. Hippos might, confront a big bull hippo, but ain't nobody trying to mess with this giant crocodile. He's chilling. He knows what's up. But the danger is always interspecies, because what happens if another apex comes along and that happens? That's basically what's happened to humans. We're all basically apex predators in our own minds. Just look how self-absorbed so many people are. I think that's not a product of people who are feeling meek and feeling like they have to group up. Like back in the day, remember the royals, remember the lords and the relationships and feudalism. When we look into the past, we see that people had more cohesion as a result of being in a position where they weren't the apexes in their own hierarchy. In a country with no real class system like the US, I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of the interpersonal relationships that we see have broken down specifically because of the interspecies competition we're seeing manifest itself as this country enters hard times. Like now, I know that there's a lot of good people out there, but I think now more than ever, people are really just about themselves and self-absorbed in so many ways.
It's natural because I only own one ebook, right? That's not a graphic novel or like a comic or something. The only ebook I own is Sun Tzu's The Art of War, right? And what you're talking about is paramount in the early chapters, right? And at the onset of the Wu Chu War, right? So when Sun Tzu is commissioned by the king, right? He comes in, and the king is thinking to himself, this kind of goes to what you said about in nature of the animal kingdom. If you are the weaker army, right, and you fear invasion by a significantly larger and more powerful army, right, your insecurity is now dictating your actions, because what is the ultimate thing? Survival, right? You're trying to survive. So when you end up bringing in Sun Tzu to say, look, here's the situation. I believe so from this perspective, the apex predator is the invading army, right? The army that you believe is set to invade. So if you think about it that way, he's like, yo, help. I hear that you're this great military mind. Help. Because if without your help, I believe I'm going to get slaughtered, right? So when it comes to adaptation, what do you think about just the very nature of how animals, like you said, when resources get scarce and everything, people start to get much more self-centered instead of being like like you said, everything's plentiful, we're all good here, we're all friends. But when, like you said, there's competition, oh no, it's time to bunker down. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that when it comes to evolving and adapting based on the predators?
Yeah, so to bring another history example into the mix, I think of what happened with Julius Caesar and Alesia. So with the siege of Alesia, they were encircled, and very famously, essentially encircled their encirclers by building a fort by hand. Yep. All these troops building fortifications by hand.
I got to ask you one question. Have you ever seen the show Battles BC? They actually talked about this. Did you ever see that show?
Oh, yeah. I've seen it, but like a while ago.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, but that's an example of people, and men specifically, who have been trained from a very early age. If they were royal or patrician, rather, especially from boyhood, they would have been trained how to fight. But if not, they would have, since their adolescent days, so 17 or 18 years old, been in the Legion with all of these people working together, being cohesive. And that's what it took to survive back in those days. What we're seeing now isn't like, oh, we're on hard times. No, we're in the transition to hard times. We're with people who are so accustomed to all of their creature comforts, all of the things that they want and desire to be at their fingertips. Like, it applies to everything. People who lack the initiative to realize what times we're living in, and it applies to everything from money to women. It's like, oh man, I can't get the car that I want or the woman that I want and all this other whoop-de-whoop. And what it is it's somebody who expects these things to come to them. When in these kind of societies, man, you better get out in the field and grow some wheat or we're going to starve to death. So that breeds a different type of human. A different diet, a different schedule, a different way of life, different dangers to encounter on a day-to-day basis. And when you take people who are essentially been coddled by late 20th and early 20th century technology and economy and all of these other luxuries we share and give them just a taste of what it means to lose quality of life, then they just go psycho. It's like their reaction is like cricket farms, for example. And you'll see scenarios, and this happens with mice too. It's when I think Australia had its massive influx of mice, they get to a certain population point, and unlike the Mouse Utopia experiment, this is wild conditions. They eat each other. They start cannibalizing one another once the resources dry up. So if you underfeed many animals, you can underfeed chickens, you'll see examples of cannibalism. You underfeed pigs, you'll see examples of cannibalism, especially in fisheries, especially in insect farms. You'll see this. You'll see animals that will turn on each other if they feel that change in conditions is too drastic. And you'll also see the converse. You'll see animals that, like oysters, for example, if you raise the water temperature over a certain amount, they'll sometimes release egg and sperm as a survival mechanism. So life has very interesting ways of maintaining balance. And humans have been constantly kind of tweaking how far we can get away with deviating from the natural conditions. So in many ways, modern society is a transitioning one. It's one that's going from a previous era of this and going to a future era of that. And especially these days, I feel like it's even more poignant. But
well, I've noticed that too, because when we think about how we interact with one another, right? And like you said, it's almost like this is something that's very prevalent in sci-fi movies about, always wanting to play God, right? Like, in Minority Report, it was the precogs, things like that. Matrix, obviously the machines had built the Matrix, blah, blah, blah. But if you really think about it, it's really a social experiment trying to fix a problem, right? Either preemptively or reactionary on those conditions, right? So like you were just saying, when you just change something just a little bit, and I told people this, it's no different than when someone says, hey man, Drex, what was life like before crack, right? Life was already bad in certain environments, right? But once you introduce crack, someone goes, okay, what happens once you introduce crack? Here's what ends up happening. You get the dealers, right, who are selling in their own neighborhoods. You get a bunch of people hooked. Their brain now, because of the chemical imbalance, reconditions itself to only crave crack, right? It eschews all other accountability because it's like crack. Because I'm sure you've seen that experiment where the rats were willing to die for an addiction, but not for their necessity, right? If it was a raft, it was like this. It's like, here's the rat on this island, right? It has to swim to this island. They showed it. I remember. They literally would sit there and die and say, oh man, that's too far. You see what I'm saying? To get what they need. But if it was an addiction, right? Crack, they would go to any lengths to get to their addiction, even if they died on the swim, right? And with this social experiments that we've been seeing, right? Feminism, you know what I'm saying? The crack epidemic, things like, the opioid epidemic that we've got now, these fake fucking shrinks that want to go ahead and say that everybody has some kind of disorder. They're gender dysmorphic. Everybody is something now, right? And you're starting to see all these horrible repercussions, right? On a global scale, from a societal level, you're starting to see the total breakdown, right? Which is kind of what you're talking about. People, like I said, people just have a little squeeze on those comforts, right? A little squeeze on those comforts, plus the social engineering, right? Of saying, you know what, Busta? You're toxic. You see what I'm saying? Because people start to react, right? You're reacting to basically someone intruding, right? Intruding on your way of life. Because if you're just sitting there living your life, right? You're just sitting there, Busta, you're just another guy chilling, right? You're chilling with your homeboys doing your thing, right? And then someone says, you know what, Busta? You're having too much fun just chilling. So we're going to legislate some new shit that says, hey, Busta, you can't have an afro. Hey, Busta, you can't do this. See, when people start coming after you for whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to react to them accordingly, right? Whether it be, on a social level talking, or it can get physical. Obviously, there's physical violence that can happen. There's a lot of things that can happen. And, you start thinking about when people start getting hooked on crack, well, who's watching after those babies, right? That's why the term crack baby, right? Then you start having kids getting raised by their goddamn grandparents. Well, guess what happens when kids are being raised by grandparents or put in foster care and all this stuff? You start to see the total breakdown. Is there anything similar to that in the animal kingdom? Like, I'm assuming in the animal kingdom, it has to be something more like a natural disaster, right? That would cause a huge shift or imbalance.
Yeah, so I think this is an example I brought up last time, but in certain bird species, they have to. In fact, I think all bird species they have to learn their songs from birth. If the bird has a certain window to acquire whatever its repertoire is going to be later in life, or to have the ability to assemble a repertoire. So if a bird, just like human beings, if they miss that period of language acquisition, like for humans, if you don't get exposed to language and you don't get exposed to how to speak, you see examples of feral or severely neglected children who never acquire the ability to actually speak because they had missed out on this critical window to acquire their language. And so you do see this in nature, in areas where formerly very social species are now sparsely populated. You see examples where the local male birds will learn the songs of other male birds in their area and therefore incur a penalty when it comes to trying to attract females. The females don't want to hear the songs of other males from other species. They still are most receptive to males who have their indigenous or native songs that they had acquired from the natural succession all throughout the millennia, millions of years that they've been alive. So, yeah, we do see that, and unfortunately, it always has the same effect. It always causes even more disruption in the population that you see. But what's more despicable is that even though in nature, usually this is something that even if it's due to something anthropogenic or whatever, that it normally corrects itself. Populations will naturally fluctuate over time. There's some island species, I think it was like the Aldabra falcon or something, that was resurrected from just like 3 specimens, one of them being a female. Like one female is the ancestor for all these falcons. And it's like the golden hamsters that people have in captivity now. It's like it was like a Syrian hamster female, one Syrian hamster female, so the descendant of all these golden hamsters in captivity. So you do see how animals can bounce back from those low population numbers. But what we see in human society is different, because the reality of total destruction or the reality of long-lasting torment and toil for a population exists when humans are able to produce enough food to keep these people alive, but not enough resources to actually lift them up. So this is why so many communities were devastated by the crack epidemic and are still being devastated by the opiate and the narcotic and the meth epidemics and the heroin epidemics that are happening currently all throughout America. Just look at the homeless crisis. You're seeing a massive, long-lasting disruption of our society that we may not be able to recover from if we let it get bad enough. And so what do people do? Oh, the war on drugs, making things even worse. Or people make sanctuary states and let the cartel run rampant, for example. And all of our problems are just getting worse because we haven't addressed the key issue, which is what happens to people physically when they become addicted. What can we expect from people who are addicted? And acknowledging that these people are sick and can be rehabilitated, but also understanding that we need to be realistic about what it takes to combat this, and not he and ha and talk about, well, we should just legalize it, and we should hand out needles of heroin. It's like these are not solutions. These aren't even Band-Aids over the solution. You're spraying some Neosporin on a bleeding cut knee and then telling the kid to go back on the playground and rub some dirt in it. So it's tragic because we could learn from nature from very simple examples that we can see with our bare naked eyes, but we're choosing still, or not really us, more like politicians are choosing to make things like the drug epidemic even worse in America and North America in general.
Well, you say that because I look at some of the things from a societal and from a social, socioeconomic standpoint, obviously socio-political, because, like you said, these politicians are pushing things, and the things they push and legislate has a profound impact on generations, right? And one of the things that I thought about was when I think about, ratchet German Shepherds, right? And when I think about them, one thing that people that kind of gets lost, that people don't understand, is this has been scientifically proven. These awful German Shepherds have higher testosterone than a lot of dudes, and they don't understand why that is. When you start removing the men out of an environment, a habitat, guess what happens to the females? They become more masculine, right? Their bodies start to change to become what? More man-like. Their voices become more man-like, right? And a lot of their behaviors become what? More man-like. Go look at some of these videos, right? Waffle House fights, Walmart fights, Chuck E. Cheese fights.
Popeyes.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, Popeyes fights.
Class 4.
Yeah, class 4 chimp outs. One of the things that you realize though is, Busta, I'm sure you've seen this, where if you look at these German shepherds in the hood, their behavior is eerily similar to like the male thugs. You see what I'm saying? They start to emulate that behavior, and like you start to go to other communities, you don't really see women fighting like this, women busting in guns like this. You're like, what the fuck? And people don't, in other communities, people don't see that. You see what I'm saying? And I said, look, man, taking the men out of an environment, right? You have to adapt. Like, I know you saw the movie, the original Terminator, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember when there's a pivotal moment in the movie right before Kyle Reese smashes our protagonist Sarah Connor, right? She asked Reese a very pointed question. She's like, Reese, the women in your time, what are they like? Remember? And he's like, good fighters and stuff. He doesn't have like love or affection or anything, because the environment has made the women do what? Become hardened, become man-like for survival, right? Against the machines. So the maternal, the soft, nurturing instinct, that was stripped from them due to the environment. And you see that especially in the Black community here in America and in other communities, where when the men are gone, the protectors, right? When the protectors are gone and there's more predators, right? So in this case, the predators are going to be, like you said, intraspecies, right? It's going to be your neighbor breathing on you, right? Trying to rob you. There's going to be police encounters, right? The alphabet boys, right? ATF, DEA, FBI. You start having all of these different factions. So that's why they're so insecure, right? Do you know what animals tend to do when they get insecure? They lash out, right? That's why they say fight or flight, right? What do you think about some of these things that you've been seeing recently in the news, especially in those areas where they're put in fight or flight, and they tend to fight knowing that the consequence is probably going to be their untimely demise?
Well, I think it's a mix of two things. People can have an amount of zealotry, I guess. Like, they can have that zeal and conviction to go above and beyond. It's like animals who go for an obvious trap, or thinking that they can get away with scavenging from a larger organism, like the brave jackal or fox that tries to get a snippet from a large bear or a lion and then ends up eating it. It just happens. I think that's just life. People will go for things that may seem illogical, and oftentimes probably are. But humans, although we are predictable in many ways, are unpredictable in others. And I think that is a virtue of our ability to reason, or maybe lack thereof. But some things just aren't reasonable. We don't have to act purely within the scope of logos and reason. We can kind of defy that and rely more on intuition or just on personal conviction, if you so choose. And some of the greatest accomplishments in human history have been done because of that. Because people who are like, oh, well, you can't sail all the way across the Pacific Ocean and settle on random little islands. And like, Polynesians did exactly that. Every human story that seems miraculous and impossible started because someone did something incredibly irrational and just went for it. And oftentimes that's just what it takes. Like, look at, I think like the end of the Sengoku Jidai in Japan, where I think it was like, it all started because one clan wanted to go march on Tokyo, and another clan got the idea to go and do that instead. And so I think it was like Oda Nobunaga got the idea from another clan to go invade Tokyo, and he did that himself. Mm-hmm. And he basically tried to unite Japan, and then in a cruel twist, he got all assassinated. And then I think it was Tokugawa Ieyasu that got in charge, and he basically implemented Sakoku and closed up Japan to everybody but the Dutch. And basically then that almost directly led to the Meiji Restoration, when Japan looked out at the rest of the world, wanted itself to be an apex predator among its peers, and realized that instead it was going to be prey. So what happened to the Japanese people? They transformed their society in almost the blink of an eye. They went from medieval to fully advanced, being more advanced than almost any other Asian country at that time, in what was essentially a single generation.
Yep.
So a kid could have been born, and by the time he was my age, have gone from a medieval society to a fully industrial one. And that's a trip, because that means that people are capable, especially mentally, of changes that they never would have thought possible. if people can go from an absolutely medieval society to one that is just as modern as any other country, then that's a change that it implies that we can also change very, very drastically in many other directions, either for better or for worse. So when you see women getting all gruff in the voice, and you see them pumping it at the gym, and they're trying to give you lifting advice, and they're starting to have a little moose knuckle or something, because you can tell they're on the juice, or you just see these like bold career women who are just hyper focused and their ovaries are all dry and they're like want kids someday on Tinder or something. You always you have to keep in mind that, you know, these changes, although they seem like they're impossible and ridiculous, are happening, and they may not stop happening, which is a black pill to some, but I just think it's fascinating in my own opinion.
I love studying them because, like I said, I sit back with a, you know, like it's kind of like it's like a trident, right? So on one hand we got the psychological study, right? Then we have the sociological study, right? And then we have the biological study. As we look at these, we're like this. That's how it's so easy for us to predict, right? When we hear a woman like this, I'm a boss bitch. I'm an alpha female. And you're like looking at them and you're like, okay, so what is it that you want out of life? Well, one day I'm going to want this. And you're thinking to yourself, you're not going to get married, not to a man you want based on, you know, because we know where this is going to lead, right? That's all we can look at certain situations and go, yeah, I can kind of predict your future based on these factors. And when it comes to these kinds of women, I want to ask you this. You know, there are a few species where the female is physically superior, right? And my thing is this: how does that play out in those species between the man and the woman when the female is the bigger, stronger sex?
Well, it usually plays out basically as a switching of roles. But the one thing that I hesitate to draw parallels with, and especially when it comes to human society, like you look at hyenas, where the females are the bigger species or the bigger member of the two genders, I guess. Or you have the deep sea anglerfish, where the men are essentially these little tiny guppies that then attach and are just a sack of sexual organs that pump into the female every once in a while. And the big giant anglerfish you see, those are all female. The males are these little tiny, almost like extra fins that are on the side, because that's all they do. They just latch on and they just fuse with the female. But as you can see, these are not very good analogs for human society, because these have come about through, you know, regardless of what you believe, either religiously or evolutionarily, it's whatever. The point is the same. These are processes that took thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years to come up. What we're seeing now is a trend that has popped up within the last decade, the last couple decades, maybe 3 or 4 decades, if you want to take it back to the roots. But this is not anything within the human, like, natural sort of structure. Sure, we can change it to accommodate this, but the transition from a medieval to a modern society is just a change of few behaviors. Like, oh, now suddenly you have like better washing detergent, or you have better soap or hygiene, or you can grow more crops or whatever because you have a large tractor instead of an ox. Things of that nature. You don't have the breakdown of the nuclear family or between relations of men and women. So in a way, it's like, yeah, you can have some tough women. You can have women who are renowned for being all, bowling pin in one hand, or rolling pin, in one hand, and baby in the other. And you can have tough women in your society, but you can't have manly, masculine women in your society. There's a big difference between those two. And I think the end result for us is going to be the degradation and eventual decline of not just our society, but any society that does this. It's not a recipe for success. Hyenas can do this because hyenas have been doing this longer than we can remember. But this is something we're trying to do in a single blink of the eye, barely even one generation, and thinking that we're just going to get away with defying all of human history. So,
well, I've told, I did a show with Andrew and Nick, and I said, hashtag starve these hoes, because these modern women, these broads have gotten so big, man. I mean, these are the biggest women that have literally ever existed in the history of our species. Never before has a women as a collective been this goddamn big, right? I mean, this is it. Here's the thing, though, Busta. It's not even close. You see what I'm saying? Historically, when you go research women, right, throughout history, they weren't 170.6 pounds as the average American woman is today. You see what I'm saying? At no point ever has there been women this big. If you were this big years ago, you were the elite, right? That means if you were a larger woman in like Victorian era, it's like, oh my God, she's the aristocracy, right? Because she had food to eat. Everybody else had families of 15. They were starving, right? You were hungry. We need to get back to starving these hoes, like I said, like I told Andrew. And I will say this though, but when it comes to all this, right? When it comes to, like I said, the mental game that you're talking about, the physical game, what do you have to say about mate selection, right? By species, and are there any anomalies based on how we are as humans?
So mate selection, when we look at apes, and people want to say like, oh, they're our closest, whatever, but behaviors differ even between very closely related species. So it's not that. It's just that in our original survival strategies, let's go back to the plains of wherever you want to go, Africa, the Levant, anywhere where there was human hunter-gatherers in an early state. We saw that relationships formed between men and women in specific ways. We saw that we had to live to a certain pace, we had to be mobile, we had to be on the go, we had to be constantly looking for resources, being inventive with how we use them. But in the modern day, I think that mate selection has become something that's been glamorized, that's been twisted in the lens of media and what people really want out of it. It's like, oh, you just want a big booty hoe, or you want a girl who has all of these other features that want to accommodate you. But I think that's a misrepresentation as well. I don't think that's it. I think the issue with modern mate selection is that men are constantly being told to get with females that have never been, and I don't mean like the Venus like statue, but I mean like women who are absolutely revolting to look at and do not stimulate us sexually at all, compared to the hunter-gatherer women that we were always programmed to like. We want women who are at least decently able to bear a child. We don't want Jack Skeleton or whatever. We want a woman who still has meat on her bones, but also a woman who is functional, a woman who we know can get around safely, a woman who is healthy. I don't know any man who's attracted to women who are like super sickly and just completely horrible in terms of health and hygiene. Guys want a clean woman of various types and whatever. You can have whatever taste you want, but these women aren't just big, they're horribly sick. These women are sick, and both mentally and physically, they're taking all kinds of antidepressants, they're taking all kinds of anxiety medications, they're taking all kinds of supplemental whatevers to try and manage their health. And I see women who are in their late 20s and early 30s who have the health of women who are in their 50s and 60s, who are suffering from diabetes, who are suffering from hypertension, who are getting early onset menopause and osteoporosis because of their weight. And it's a health crisis. It's costing the healthcare system billions of dollars each year. Diabetes alone may overtax our system by itself if 1/3 of Americans are so overweight that they're either diabetic or pre-diabetic.
No lockdowns for that one, right, Drex?
I know, man.
Could you imagine? We're locking every fat woman in their house until they stop eating.
I mean, it's very true though, because I mean, dude, there are things that I'll say and people will get offended. I'm like, you don't understand, man. It's unhealthy to be, and this is the reason why I think the fat acceptance movement is so dangerous, because like you can't be out here telling girls it's okay to be 300 pounds, right? You're beautiful in any size. No, you're not. You see what I'm saying? Like, no, you're not. Like, and here's the sad thing. Not only are you not healthy, you are robbing yourself of what most women want. Not all, but most women want to be married with kids, right? Well, if you are a big tub of lard, how many men are going to really want you, right? And you're starting to see as more and more men kind of check out of society, right? And the hookup culture is so prevalent. You're seeing fewer and fewer women get relationships. And what are you hearing? It's affecting their mental health, like what you just said, right? And now take that, and then you go like this. What do you think about, like, in terms of our biology, right? So we have our biology and how it relates to our mate selection, because, like, let's face it, like you said, men seek that, a body that is strong. You know what I'm saying? A woman looks strong. She looks fertile. She's young. That's why guys don't go for 60-year-old women. You see what I'm saying? They aren't trying to, you can't mate with a 60-year-old, right? So a guy's not going to be like, oh, yeah, man, I definitely want a Jaguar. She's past a cougar, right? Guys aren't saying that. You see what I'm saying? So when women walk around, like, now we have more single women here in the Western world, childless single women, than any point that's ever happened in our species, right? These have huge societal repercussions, right? And now all of a sudden, the like you said, they're trying to basically force men to like something that they've never liked. And then they're trying to tell women like something they've never liked, which is a soft, effeminate beta, right? Like, oh yeah, because now, like you said, society has gotten so comfortable that we just look at him as a good provider, right? Look, he makes money. He's a software engineer. But she's looking at this dude like, this guy doesn't arouse me at all. I'm not into him at all. But he makes money, and money affords me a comfortable lifestyle. But like something in her hardwiring knows this isn't what I want. In the same way that a guy, like, Tim talked about the that picture where it's like the 4 cucks around that one land whale, right? And it's like psychologically, these dudes know this is not what they want, right? Like a cuck can't bring himself to be like, yeah, this is really what I want. I want to be one of many. See, because what men and women seek from each other is opposite. So like men aren't going to share a female. Women have no problem sharing a dude, because what women are seeking is those resources, right? That provision and protection. So it's easy for 4 or 5 women to be like, oh yeah, this is my husband. Doesn't work the other way around. You see what I'm saying? Like, for what men want from women doesn't work, but they're trying to push that, right? And once again, that goes back to that social engineering. They're trying to push these things. And like, you were talking about this earlier. In the animal kingdom, it just is what it is, right? Animals react on instinct, on evolution. You know what I'm saying? They're action and reaction, right? There is no like social, there's no social media in the Congo. You see what I'm saying? Dictating what animals should think or how they should scratch their bellies and shit, right? How they should post for the gram. Duck lips and shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's kind of a scary thought when you think about just how much these influences can kind of make someone basically go against their own biology, right? Did you ever think about that, though, Busta? Like how people can literally go against their own biology.
Are we the only species who can do that?
I mean, for the relevance of discussion, there are animals that can radically change their physiology very quickly. But again, I don't like drawing parallels between animal life that may not have the same mechanisms going on or don't have the same precedent of it. Like bullfrogs can completely desiccate out, and with just a little bit of water, they can go back. Like humans can't do that. So, why is comparing like how fish can change and have polymorphism to humans? So I'm just going to keep it simple and say that, people face those consequences by living outside of their nature. Every single beta who's like, oh, I don't need to work out, I'm going to eat vegan, I'm going to, just try to enter into these orbiting relationships with women that keeps me sexually frustrated. What happens to these guys? They're porn addicts, or they are so out of shape and so malnourished that they're physically, like, they're growing moobs. Like, look at Bill Gates. Like, Bill Gates, perfect example of somebody who has eaten far too much broccoli, and it's just been like probably just getting IV drips every single morning for the last 50 years. Like, he doesn't even eat food anymore. I don't know what this man is thinking, just coming up here and talking about like, oh, I'm going to talk about health, or, seeing other people who are like, oh, like Secretary of I don't know, what was it, medicine Belgium. Or something from like German?
I think she's Belgian, right? She's like literally 700 pounds, right?
Yeah, she's health minister, and it just blows my mind because what these people don't get is that health isn't something that you can just take lightly. Once your health goes, it takes a lot of work to get that back. You can't mess up your joints and mess up your back being the offensive tackle at football in high school and then think you're going to get all that mobility back later on at some point. As you get older, you have to take care of your health. And even though you can get away with being fat, you can get away with being huge and whatever. And I mean huge, because of course, Americans, Europeans have different metrics. It's okay to be a little bit, on the plus side. You can have some meat on your bones, especially if it fits your frame and fits your physiology. I personally, if I gained 50 pounds, I'd look horrible. I couldn't do that. I'm naturally very ectomorphic. I'm naturally very thin. I don't put on fat very easily. I always hovered about 14% body fat just by nature. I do try to eat right and exercise and all that. but that's just naturally who I am. I know guys who have the same routine as me, eat the same calories as me, they're just a bit, bigger, whatever. I'm talking about people who are so out of shape that you look at them and you're like, there's no way. Like this, if this guy can't go up the stairs without being out of breath, and I mean like not a flight, I'm talking just the stairs, like to get up some like 4 or 5 stairs. That is a sign that your health is failing before your eyes. Like regardless of your politics, regardless of my aesthetics, like how I can attract a mate. Are you even going to be around in 20 years? And I think men and women subconsciously get on that. Like a woman understands that this beta probably isn't going to make it because in the past, betas didn't make it. You couldn't be some little vegan bitch out in the Serengeti and be like, oh no, like it's like, oh, your big gut and you're like trying to hunt. It's like you're the shittiest hunter. You can't throw, you can't run, you can't keep up, so you're going to get left behind. And if not that, then it's like no one's going to want your ass. No one wants the guy who can't hunt, who can't throw a spear, who can't defend them, makes a bunch of fucking excuses. It's just natural. It's like you can look back to just 20, 30 years ago about like, okay, what kind of people did they have in the media? What kind of people did they have to sell their product? Victoria's Secret wasn't pulling out no plus size this and that back in 1990, not even in 2005. But now what do you got? You've got these plus size models who obviously they have all kinds of problems. No amount of airbrushing can take that away. Yep. And on the contrary, you're getting people who try to demonize, like, oh yeah, you work out, or oh yeah, you are. It's like, oh, you're too thin, or something like that. You get the almost the opposite now, where if people aren't big enough, they're seen as being fat phobic just because they're in shape and want to have an opinion. And suddenly they want to pretend like their health is some. Oh no, my health isn't affected. I'm just as healthy as everybody else. It doesn't matter that I can't walk 10 feet without needing a milkshake. It doesn't matter that I go to McDonald's every single day and pound a large fry and a double whatever. It doesn't matter. And that's just ridiculous. I think it's just being so in denial of reality. It's like me saying like, oh, I'm not hairy. I'm not hairy at all. Like, how dare you call me hairy? I'm not furry. I'm none of that. It's like, that's bullshit. I know that I have like an afro. It's like, that's what I feel like when these people come up to me and they're just jiggling. They look like, Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z coming up to me and telling me like, oh, I'm just as healthy as you are. And I don't know. To me, there seems to be so many deeper issues than just like how it affects how you get with somebody. You got to take care of yourself, man.
Well, these narratives are dangerous, and there's something I want to ask you about. It's something that we touched on briefly in the live stream, because it's something that I harp on quite often with dudes, and it's like this: male versus female. Hold on, let me use air quotes. Loyalty, right? Loyalty to their mates and to their offspring, right? Because I've told people for years, right? I've had, bitch made simps and feminazi broads sit there and say, Drex, you're making everything up. No, people care. They love, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, and Tim knows, I've said this from day one. When shit hits the fan, when a war breaks out, we'll see how loyal people are to their, their mate and their offspring. You heard about what's going on in Ukraine, and these hoes are on Tinder and shit. Oh, what happened, right? What happened?
Drex, no, right. It's even funnier. It's even funnier because the Russian troops had their Tinder profile set so it was locating them. And so the Ukrainian army would grab a bitch's phone and be like, oh, Ruslav is about 30 miles north. We're going to bomb his ass.
Yep. It was that simple. I want Busta's take on this. What do you think about loyalty? Because, obviously, zoology, you're studying species. How loyal are males and females to both each other and their offspring throughout the animal kingdom?
So, I mean, it's very well established in the animal kingdom. When you look at monogamous species, that when you actually study their population genetics, you see that there isn't just monogamy going on. And oftentimes, at least with male to female, what you get is an intense chaperoning. So I mentioned last time, with monogamous species, you think it's this lovey-dovey, oh, we'll only ever be with each other and all this whatnot. And in reality, that's not what we see. What we see is when females start to become receptive, males guard them all day, all night. Like they're always shadowing them, always making sure other males aren't trying to swoop in while she's fertile, because what's she going to do? And quite conversely, females try to at least keep men around, or like also shadow their males, because the males will also go off when the females done being receptive and look for more receptive females. You see this all across birds, and you also see examples with a lot of shorebirds, especially where they'll have two eggs, but one of the like older siblings will just kick the younger one out because they can't really support both of them, and the other chick is kicked out of the nest and starves to death. But this is a survival mechanism. If anything's wrong with that first egg, or if that first egg is contaminated and the chick comes out sick or something, then that secondary egg will kick it out of the nest. And so you see that these creatures that are still pretty K-selecting, they're supposed to go and regurgitate fish, their offspring. They'll fly days on the wing to feed it. But the first time they hatch, they're like, tough shit, little guy. I already got one of them. So you see how it changes. You'll see how a woman will have, a large family of 4 kids or 5 kids or something, but then have had like 4 different abortions, before she was married because, oh no, I wasn't ready for a kid yet. I wanted to focus on my career and find a good man. So there's women go out here with like straight up haunted vaginas, these soccer moms coming out here, and it's like, yeah, 3 kids and 15 abortions. And that's just how it is. I think that loyalty comes from, I don't know, virtue. Like, you can't have loyalty without virtue. You can't have zero moral compass and then say you're loyal. And this is what I talk to with dudes who, even though I may look a certain way and come off a certain way, like I try to be very compassionate to people and everything, but I'm not naive. And I know that people will see that, take that as weakness, and you just got to flip the script on them. You can't be naive. You can't be unaware of human nature and how it manifests itself, especially regarding men and women. It's so complicated, but so easy at the same time if you know the mechanisms and can make the right comparisons where it applies just based on behavior.
Do you think options is one of the main culprits to quote unquote loyalty, right? Because, I've said this, the people that you hear that are most pro-marriage, right? The biggest proponents of marriage, you ever notice they seem to be guys, especially from the male perspective, they seem to be guys who don't have a lot of options, right? They aren't the Lothario. They aren't the playboy, right? Playboys don't really talk too much about marriage, right? Because they're like, why would I commit? Because I have all these options. And we see that with women, right? Young, hot women who are out riding the carousel don't really talk much about marriage and commitment, right? They, like you said, they put it off, right? Oh, one day, right? I got my whole phase because she's at her peak SMV, right? And so the question is, like you said, when it comes to this loyalty, they aren't really loyal. Like you said, whether it be through abortion, whether it be through, I got to find a man because, like Coach Greg Adams said, right? She's trying to look to hit a buzzer beater, right? She's about to hit that wall, and she's like, shit, the clock's about to strike midnight. I gotta lock down a man. And like you said, that's when they're that anxiety, right? That insecurity gets much more fierce. You start to hear guys talk about the behavior of women who are, later in life, right? And if you notice, Busta, they really try to push for relationships, right? A 19-year-old girl we're saying a modern 19-year-old girl, right? Who's out riding the carousel, living her best life, right? She's not really pushing for commitment, is she? Kind of just out there, right? But all of a sudden, have you ever heard about guys talking to 29-year-old girls, right? 39-year-old girls?
Ooh,
commitment, right? Like, a dude goes on like one date, like, oh yeah, let's just eat and have a couple of drinks. So somebody see this going. What the fuck? Because that biological clock is ticking, right? They're sitting there thinking like, okay, if I meet him at 33, and if we can, move in by 34, marriage by 35, at least maybe I can squeeze out 2 kids.
Shot clock's at 1.
See, because and you start to see that, right? And my thing is this, though, to my question to you, though, Busta, what do you think about the forces, the powers that be that are neutering our nature, which would be, say, church, the courts, right? The social shame, right? And because without these, right? Let's just say without these outside pressures, what would people be doing, right? But without all this social shame and the church, the courts, because let's face it, I don't know if you've ever talked about this with your buddies, but like I've talked to lots of married men, and you know what they've told me? if it wasn't for what they could lose through the courts, they would have left, right? Like, if I could leave scot-free, keep all my assets, yeah, I would have bounced. What do you think about that? About all of this neutering of our nature?
Well, there's a very simple and inconvenient truth if you consider it going back to the most basic, and that's that women naturally, and I mean naturally, I mean in these systems where it's just hunter-gatherer, there's some examples of matrilineal society, sure, but you see women basically in a subordinate position to men when it comes to how and where they can go about in society. You see women that are not able to just be let off leash. They have either escort by male relatives, which isn't just a thing in the Middle East. It was a thing long before in history all throughout the planet. But women are closely guarded. They're closely kept near family until they're married off. And marriage was seen as a way for families to both exchange and pool resources. And it was very strategic. It was both a religious and also incredibly tactical decision. And modern marriage is just a joke because the modern institution of marriage has been so thoroughly degraded that, like you mentioned the church, you mentioned society, you mentioned all this, like a strong church or a strong cohesive society would make marriage a much more legitimate institution in the eyes of people. People in the past wouldn't engage in marriage until they were absolutely ready. And they would take it so far that they would not have sex with other people until they were. And that's an insane level of commitment because the stakes were so high. This is like you're combining all of your family's assets with another family's at a time where if anything goes wrong, you could starve to death. Again, it's like you're so close to going back to just absolutely feudal conditions back in even the early 20th century. But in the modern day, a woman doesn't need a man to get money. She can go down and get a job or get a degree or do a trade or whatever and make decent cash. So she's lost that impetus. Like, oh, I don't need to pull assets because I'll always have assets. They get comfortable with our current society. And so what you get is a group of people who have faced off with essentially all of their assets kind of already in order. They don't feel like they have that existential threat. Like, oh, even if I lose my job, I'll just collect unemployment and then get another job or start my own business. Because this is America. Or at least for me, it's America. I don't know about you, Tim. But when it comes to everything else, it's just clear to me that in the modern day, we have become spoiled and decadent. And we've applied that to relationships too. It's not just enough that we collect shiny, pretty new objects and things, the newest Jordans, the newest car, the newest whatever, like album dropping. We also have to accumulate the newest guy or girl, the newest cute this and that, the newest trophy to add to our belt. And what it's ultimately doing is it's skewing the game. Because a saying that I really love and that applies, I think, really well to the current predicament that we find ourselves in the dating pool is that, a man cares more about a woman's past, but a woman cares more about a man's future.
Yep.
And in our society, I can see how there's a lot of bitch-made dudes, but I think it's a natural progression of man to go through a phase where you're broke in your teens and 20s, and then you get about some shit in your late 20s or late 30s maybe, and then you're set. And suddenly, that's just been the trend all throughout human history. But it's women who've changed, in my opinion, to enter this unnatural state of the career woman who, far past her prime, assuming that younger competition does not exist, will still be able to have the leverage that she had in her prime because she thought, oh yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I could be 33 and try to compete with women a decade younger than me with any success. So men are looking for those unicorns. There are women out there who do still want to get married legitimately at young ages, and they're in very high demand. Whether they're gold diggers, whether they're just looking for that resources, they don't really want to do anything but have kids and be barefoot and pregnant. Those girls are a hot commodity, and higher tier, whatever men that these older women want, these career women who want CEOs who make even more money than they do at their point in a career, are facing the hard facts that these men go for women who maybe don't have the work experience or education that they do and are just younger. And it's
and the women know this because they're in denial. And you talk about marriage. Something that a lot of people don't know is that this whole love component to marriage is a new concept. This is very new. I don't know if people know this shit, but like this whole these guys obsessed with we need love. If you look in religious texts, they don't really talk very much about love between men and women. They'll talk about love for God, for a higher power, right? And they'll talk about how a man is supposed to love a woman because a man can do that, and that's what will basically entice him to provide for her, right, and protect her. But like when it comes to the women, they always talk about what word? Respect. They don't talk about love because they know female nature, right? They'll just monkey branch. They'll lay on their back for the conqueror, right? And when it comes to this love thing, can you talk about there's like this mythical emotion, right? And can you talk about if it exists in the animal kingdom, right? Are animals really loving one another?
I think with the human brain, there is that complexity to emotion that I think kind of makes the question nuanced, but people don't really understand what love is. They misrepresent if you bring it back to like the Bible, what does it mean to have love? Love is all-encompassing goodness. It's a genuine desire to want to be part of and to uplift somebody else or something. It's something that involves a genuine amount of personal investment into somebody, not for any ulterior motive, but the fact that you genuinely want to be part of this person's life. And I've seen how that works in older people. I've seen old people who've been married for 65 years, gone through every hump up and down, and they are genuinely in love. I do not see that with modern people. I didn't see it in my parents' generation. I didn't see any of that shit. And the reason is because these people have been hedonists for all of their adult lives. Ever since they were children crying over a candy bar, they have been absolutely unchecked hedonists, thinking that suddenly, on the turn of a dime, they can become committed, open-hearted, and truly loving people with zero proper conditioning. Folks who have not sorted their shit out, who have tons of personal issues, tons of baggage, don't know anything about their relationship with themselves, with any higher power, with any real sense of structure, and they feel lost in the world and think they can solve that by finding the one, finding that beautiful princess or prince that'll sweep them off their feet and make everything right. And it's bullshit.
Put simply, you got to love yourself before you can love anyone else, right?
Yeah, and again, like I said, these are people who are taking medications, getting prescriptions from their doctors just to not kill themselves, just so they can be functioning members of society. So, I mean, in a way, it itself is a form of sickness. It's a massive epidemic of people who are so skewed and so messed up on the inside that even though they might be attractive, even though they might be successful, get a lot of people to approach them, I know dudes who are so damaged and broken that even though they're all like, oh, I'm alpha this, oh, I'm banging all these chicks that, I'm like, bro, you will never find true happiness because all of your validation comes from the women that you sleep with. You have no real substance to you. And
Jack Murphy comes to mind.
I don't know if that's women involved with that one, but
right.
I don't know. A whole lot of plastic stuff on Chatterbait and whatnot, but
I noticed that too.
Me, man, I don't see any straight guys doing that kind of stuff. But.
Right.
I do got a question on that before we wrap up, but Words in the chat says there's a term that you don't hear a lot of anymore in the context of family, and it's duty. What are there mammals in the animal world that display the sense of duty? Or is that strictly an emotion trait, a human trait?
Oh, no. Duty is something that is fundamental for survival. You don't have a duty, a pure compulsion for no reason. Duty isn't something that comes from a higher authority telling you, you have your duty to do this. It's something that's an obligation based off of pure natural propulsion. You know, beavers in a dam or any monogamous species where the male is also participating in the child-rearing process, that sense of duty is strong. Or eusocial insects with ants. You know, they have a duty to collect resources. Some have a duty to defend the colony. But with human beings, duty comes from not just nature. It also comes from resolve. It comes from a deeper sense of understanding of what you're getting yourself into. Anybody can look around and see the things in the world that basically surround them, that make up their periphery, whatever. But it takes people with a degree of reason to look around them and actually genuinely understand how everything fits together. So if you talk about duty, it's like, you know, some people can have the same circumstances and have no duty at all. They lack the integrity. they lack the interest, they lack the passion, and there's just no duty to commit. Like, they don't have that duty. If a guy's like, okay, this girl, I don't even know if this kid's mine. She said she was pregnant, pulling out all kinds of whatnot. I was double wrapped up, triple wrapped up. And now she says the baby's mine. I haven't seen her for 3 weeks, and she says she's 2 weeks pregnant. How much is that guy going to have duty to raise that kid? It's not that man's duty. There's no ulterior compulsion showing him that, okay, this is something that, even though if he's a man of integrity, he would say, nah, fuck that shit. I don't care. I'm not going to step up to that plate. And the only guys who see that doing are like, these betas who think it's okay to like, do whatever with women who they know will obviously just use them for whatever. But duty is something in the animal kingdom that is always a result of true ulterior motive, of true, genuine, and fundamental interest to that organism. The male contributes to the raising of the child because that child is carrying his genes and will represent him in the next iteration of this population's existence in the years to come, and hopefully for many years as this child carries on the torch. But in humanity, duty often comes from same motives. When you have a kid, you want to care for this child because it does carry your genes. But when it comes to other forms of duty, such as serving your country or community, or employing in a certain job, or volunteering for whatnot, that comes from deeper motivations that aren't just like superficial nonsense. So I guess it's slightly different, but fundamentally the same.
Bus, I have a question for you. In your field, right? What about zoology helped you most when you were studying and interacting with humans, right? Because you're just going around, like, obviously, you're another man in the world. You interact with people. What about all that? I think it's almost like zoology is like a natural red pill, right? Like, by understanding how animals are, you have to get to humans, right? Why do humans mate? Why do humans do X, Y, and Z, right? It seems to come natural, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I learned from studying zoology, and as it applies to human beings, is realizing that social animals in nature, the pigs and sheep, the prides of lions, understanding how relationships are maintained and how relationships are built has done wonderful things for me in my life. I realized that if I treat people like they're my pack mates, like they're my friends, like they're people who are part of my circle and who I show a genuine interest in helping uplift, that I've opened up incredible doors in my life. I've never tried to be a contrarian when I didn't have to be. I never tried to rub elbows where I didn't. I've stood up for myself and I've been a man. I've taken my licks and I've really just put myself out there, and I don't really give a shit what people say. But the difference is that in social animals, you see the same thing. The bison doesn't give a shit if anything's in his way. If a bunch of wolves start chasing him, he'll trample the wolves. He'll fight just as well as anybody else. But he won't let himself get separated. He won't let other members die. You see footage of animals, Cape buffalo going back to save calves that get caught. They could have all run off to safety, but they genuinely care. They're social animals, and they have this ingrained instinct to help one another. Even if they could get away safely, they're in this together. And I think seeing that in animals and seeing how raw their not love for one another, but simply how deep they just instinctively care for one another, seeing how they get through adversity that way, I'm like, why can't I be that way? So I think that's the biggest lesson I learned from my studies.
Well, what was your biggest surprise and disappointment in zoology and learning about how animals function?
I think my biggest disappointment didn't come from the animals or nature themselves. It came from the people who thought that they have it all figured out and are going to tell you exactly how it is. Because even though I can relay information of what I've learned, even though I can tell you about what's been observed, I can never tell you about what's truly going on. And there's so many people out there, not even just in zoology, but in just science in general, who do the same thing. And that's literally how I ended up on YouTube. I wouldn't even be here right now. Even my Busta, the whole thing comes from my YouTube channel, where I just kind of critique scientific literature, scientific pop culture. And it's because the most disappointing thing in zoology really is academia. It's the whole process of paying all this money and going through years of study just to basically get indoctrinated about what other people want you to think about nature. The animals themselves are dope. Honestly, I don't regret a single moment struggling to get into a class or do whatever, because animal life is wonderful. I think that nature itself, the flora, the fauna, the grass underneath your feet, it's all so intricate and complex. Even the most mundane shit like a dust mite in your house is just a perfect little machine meant to survive. And you don't even think about it. You don't think of all the cells in your body and all the processes that go on. It's so beautiful and wonderful and rich. And yet I feel like it's been utterly corrupted by a bunch of people who just want to boost their own egos and, basically become modern priests telling people what to think and how to think.
Well, do you study German Shepherds? I mean, Tim and I want to know. You're a zoologist. Do you study German Shepherds in their natural habitat, which would be at Planned
The nearest
Parenthood, fast food joint, liquor store, gun shop, hair and nail salons, bleaching clinics. Do you ever study these creatures in their natural habitat?
I gotta tell you, Drex, it was when I was studying German that I probably was interacting with these interesting animals the most. So,
Ugh, I'm sad to hear that, man.
What do you put? So often in zoology, you have to trap to capture an animal, right, to study it. What do you put in a trap to catch a German Shepherd? Like a white man?
Food stamps and white men.
I think you have to go with the good old fashioned checkbook. Because they never know. It's like a man with a checkbook these days. It's a big
government checkbook.
Pick it up. They'll leave right through it. Oh, a good way. Leave an unlocked iPhone out. I think an unlocked iPhone and a big old bear trap will be perfect. I'll just see like the light shining out through the cage bars, and they'll be like, "Ooh, like who texted him?"
Somebody got me an iPhone. Now, I do want to let you out here with this question. It's my last question on here. It's about pets. So there's only a few creatures in the animal kingdom that actually keep pets of another species. So my question to you is, why do you think so many people need or want them? And then after that, I have a question of, this kind of goes back to the loyalty thing, which is, how do you feel about how people treat pets when disaster strikes or times get hard?
So, there's a classic example of, the tarantula keeping little frogs as a pet to help clean out its burrow from parasites. I know that people will often keep pets in the past, originally, as pest deterrent, as guard animals, as working animals. The Staffordshire Terrier was a classic working dog. Everything, the Kangal, the dog with the strongest bite force, the biggest, meanest dog on the block, is a shepherd for sheep, meant to tangle with fully grown wolves. And that's where most of our pets really came from. Even when we kind of played around with like, oh, we'll have elephants tamed, it wasn't for amusement. They were war elephants. This was in Carthage, and they were actively using them against their enemies for shock and awe and also outright destruction. They weren't parading them around to kids in circuses. They were driving them out on the battlefield.
Did you like how horses reacted to war elephants? Because that was actually a scare tactic. Like horses. So Tim, you think about it in the old era of warfare, right? In ancient warfare, the horse was it, right? There were no cars. It was horses, right? Mm-hmm. Horses did not react well to fucking war elephants at all. They panicked. They would and they would go up, and some of them try to run away, right?
Their rider.
They'd buck, yeah, because they're like, what the hell? Like, this was unusual to them, right?
I was actually just reading about Hannibal and the March of Hannibal.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, man. Like, dude, horses fucking panic. Like, and horses didn't really panic about anything, right? They're horses, right? And like, it kind of goes back to what you said earlier. We talked about, where you were on the food chain, right? Horses did not do well listening to the sounds and in smells also. The smell and the sound of a war elephant. It wasn't until they realized the only thing you could do against a war elephant was to use a spear to attack the eyes. That's how you went and neutralized the war elephant.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, people reacted in a similar way too. It's like suddenly they weren't the biggest guy on the block. There's very few troops on this planet in antiquity at all that have ever survived or maintained attacks against war elephants. There's been a few classic examples of Roman legions doing so, and they've made the history books because war elephants make a lot of people break and run. And when on the battlefield, fear spreads like a plague. There's so many accounts of Phobos entering the battlefield and causing all the troops to rout like this. And this was in Rome. This is in like ancient Greece, some of the strongest and most formidable warriors in history. And people talked about a literal god of fear going through the battlefield and making all of these grown ass Spartan men or whatever. I don't know if it's ever happened to the Spartans. Technically, it probably has. But making all these men who are conditioned, trained warriors for decades and coming from long martial traditions, seeing all kinds of whatnot, suddenly get taken by fear and run away because they've just been overwhelmed by the odds that are facing them. They're outnumbered, or they have a charging war elephant, and they'll break and run. They don't give a shit. They'll break and run in mass.
Well, that's why they call it primal, right? That's why they call it primal fear. And it's really it's that fear of the unknown, right? Because, like, you can be the baddest dude ever, right? Someone's like, no, this is the single baddest dude that's ever walked the planet, right? All of a sudden, imagine seeing some shit that is impossible, right? Like, you know, we talk about, like, you know, like I said, I like to use movies because it's something that everyone can relate to, right? There are movies where, like, you know, whether it be like zombies, right? Or it'd be aliens or something that's supernatural, right? Or a ghost or a monster. And you see people fucking panic. And you go, why? You know, because that's the reason why, if you notice, we, the audience, are like this, man, if that were me, dude, I would do this. And people are like, you say that shit. Shut up. Because Tim, look at zombie movies, right?
Yeah.
We watch a zombie movie and we go like this, man, I would totally just go ahead and grab this TV monitor and hit the damn thing in the head and kill it. It's like, yeah, you say that because you've seen a million zombie movies. In real life, right? Imagine if, like, you know, there was no zombie movies to ever see. Imagine seeing a person reanimate in front of you, right? Like, what the fuck?
Drex, the only way I'd be willing to take on a zombie is at 200 yards with a rifle. That's the only That's the only time I think I have a chance at winning the battle.
Well, but Tim, even then, you know, Nick and I went to go see a movie that I think this is one of the beauties of when we are creators, right? We can kind of create and we adapt to expectation, right?
Yeah.
Nick and I went to go see 28 Days Later when it came out, right? Up until that movie, you remember this, Busta, all zombies were slow, right? Shambling around, right? One of the major changes 28 Days Later did was that it had all the same properties, right? They're hypersensitive to sound, right? But what 28 Days Later did is they said, oh, no, we have this rage virus. The zombies can fucking run. Nothing is more terrifying. And that's what made the last of us, right?
Shit.
Yeah. Because Tim, let's say you got a rifle, right? Look, you're like this. You aim, pow. That sound makes it go this. Huh, and they start sprinting towards you. You're like, holy shit.
Holy shit.
Because that goes back to what Busta's saying. That's a primal fear, right? Because you have now subverted the expectation of what a zombie movie can be. Because if zombies can sprint, right? They can sprint and they keep all the same properties, right? Shooting them doesn't stop them. They just keep running, right? You blow off an arm, they keep running, right? That is now terrifying because you're like, holy shit. A threat that was already just a threat is now much more terrifying. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie called It Follows, right? I think it's great for kids to learn about STDs. It Follows, it just keeps going. It never stops, ever, right?
Yeah.
And you think about how terrifying that is, because like I said, although it moves slow, the idea that it never stops is fucking terrifying. And it's like, you know, we talk about, you know, like you said, the animal kingdom, apex predators. Do you believe that, like, if there was like a, you know, we'll leave you out of here with this. Do you believe that if there was like a truly unquestioned God or Lucifer came down on earth, people would suddenly flip the script because they would see a higher power, right? That they would change behavior. What do you think about that?
Well, it says in the Bible that when Christ comes next, he won't bring peace, he'll bring a sword. And I think that the implication is that I don't think, because look how people react to aliens. Archilochus said, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. Oh no, the cat's on the mic. No,
yeah.
Alpine, go away. But sorry about that.
It's all good.
But no, it's like, you know, people think they're hot shit until shit really hits the fan. You watch how someone reacts to a car accident. How they drive past a car accident when they see a car accident happen in front of them. People talk mad shit about, oh man, in this situation I do this and that. They just stand there like a bystander. They just stand there dumb with an open mouth, like, oh, you're gonna act like you're like Tom Cruise or Hasselhoff or something and be like the big savior. Or, you know, look at school shootings. You know, everybody has this fantasy like, oh, I'm going to be the one to stop.
Yeah, I'll tackle the gunman and take the gun from him.
I'm going to sit behind the door like this, right, Tim? Even though you're unarmed and this guy has an assault rifle, I'm going to sit behind the door. He's going to come in and it's like, yeah, you say that shit.
First of all, have you ever tried to disarm someone? Because you don't know how to do it unless you've tried. That's why they teach it in martial arts. Drex, if you've seen Bruce Lee on TV do a kick, a spinning heel kick, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. Or would the reasonable person say, well, no, I need to train for 25 years in martial arts before I can do what Bruce Lee does?
Yep.
Yeah, you need to be trained in weapons disarmament.
Well,
you can't just put your hand on someone's gun because all it's going to do is burn your hands.
It'll burn your hand. Hold on. Now, Tim, it's funny you say that. This goes back to what Busta was saying. The images that have permeated the human brain have fucking made people disillusioned and delusional because let's be honest. Hey, Tim, isn't the reason why a lot of people think they're tough guys is because they play too many video games, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can watch too many movies. I could totally do that, Busta. Oh, hell yeah, man. I'm going to do X, Y. It's like, yeah, bro. Look, you see what's going on in Ukraine? There are people out there volunteering to go over there, right? Yeah, man, I'm going to go after some Soviets. You say that until you are in there.
Lands. Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Busta, I want you to imagine this, right? Imagine being the guy who's never picked up a gun. And this is the big thing. This is the reason why I always say this is I go hard at gun guys for this one reason only. Don't tell me how tough you are, how accurate you are. Have you ever been shot at in an active war zone? 99.9% of people will say no, right? Like, well, no. I've shot, stationary targets, right? When you're in a war zone, and this goes back to what you said, right? When shit hits the fan, it's easy. You remember in Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee says it to O'Hara, right? He goes, boards don't hit back, right? Everybody looks tough when they shadow box, right? But when people get into a real fight, they, oh, shit. Same with war, right? It's easy to say, I'm going to be this big, badass Rambo guy. Go into a war. Tim, could you imagine shells hitting, blowing shit up and gunfire? Actually, like, imagine seeing a dude right next to you going, bam, and his face gets blown off.
So I had a gas tank blow. I don't know. I don't remember how far I was from it. But I remember at the time feeling the shock wave go right through my chest, thinking, holy shit, that hurt a lot. And I was like way down the block from it, right? You don't realize how painful those explosions are to experience. They blow out, if you've had lightning strike near you before, blow out your eardrums.
Yep.
You have no idea how debilitating that is to the average person. Right? When a shell goes off near you, you are on the ground in the fetal position, crying your eyes out for mama.
Yeah, until it becomes routine.
Yeah.
Like, and this kind of goes with what Busta was saying. Look, I can remember saying I was this badass guy that would react a certain way when certain things happen, right? I had a teammate have a seizure on me, right? And I thought he was joking, right? Because, think about it. Tim, if you've never seen someone have a seizure before, right? Never in your whole life.
I grew up with someone with epilepsy.
Okay, the very first time you saw it, though, right? Yeah. You thought they were joking, right?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. Like,
I didn't know what it was. So it was foreign to me. So at first, I started laughing. Like, dude, like, I'm sitting there like chuckling, like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, and he falls over.
Yeah, he's flopping like a dead fish.
Yeah, he's flopping. And so at first, I'm like, this is kind of convincing until he's like rubbing his head on the ground. And Busta, this is exactly what you said about the car accident. I shit you not. This was my reaction. Because I had never seen that before, right? And it was another one of my teammates who must have dealt with somebody who's had seizures. He went and helped him, right? Like, make sure he doesn't like choke on his tongue or bite his tongue. So he did that, right? It happened again in my life. You should have seen the difference between the first time it happened with my teammate and this person that it happened to the second time, right? It was like this. Oh, yep. Hold on. Are you okay? Let me move your head. It was just, you see what I'm saying? Step by step. I got to open your mouth. I got to make sure.
You learn it.
You
learn by doing. Humans learn by doing.
Yep. One time it was Frozen. Second time it was Man of Action. All it takes is one. And that's why they say it takes one time, Tim, one day of warfare to either sink or swim, right? You're the guy who's going to, like you said, curl up in the fetal or you're like this. Holy shit, dude, this is fucking real. But after that first day, once you've seen a guy get shot, once you've seen a medic sitting there going like this, administering medical aid to somebody that is not going to make it, maybe a day of that, maybe a week of that, however long, everyone has different levels, right? All of a sudden, once it becomes routine, right? Routine, you're just kind of like, eh. And that's what you're saying
And-
earlier. The human brain can just adapt to that.
Drex,
Yeah.
Most people think they can take another human's life until they're staring them in the eye.
Yeah. Shooting from someone from afar, right? Like if you saw someone like up in a tower, right, and you went brrr, and you saw them fall, that doesn't have the same impact as you remember that infamous scene in Saving Private Ryan with the knife.
Oh yeah, with the wrestling.
Yeah.
It's just like that is tough for anyone to watch because like that's different, right? Seeing seeing someone up close and personal in battle is very different from shooting it from a far distance.
Yeah, and routine is a very different thing than, even being able to initially do that. Because there's some people who can't even help someone one time. There's people who faint at the sight of blood. They will never become accustomed to someone having a seizure or having a medical emergency in front of them. These are people who, even though they might be tough, if they've never seen the sight of blood and they pass out, then it's like, that's it. There are guys who, fail to pass all kinds of military examinations. They fail to pass buds. They fail to become Green Berets. Not because they, oh man, I have the attitude that I'm a tough guy or whatever. It's like, well, this guy, when it comes down to it, either doesn't have what it takes or severely overestimated his own abilities. It's like, oh yeah, I could go out there and I could bring it to the Russians. I'm like, okay, well, can you carry a rucksack that's your own body weight? Can you carry a teammate that's heavier than you out of danger? Can you do that and then fire your weapon effectively and cover and move and employ all the tactics that are expected of you? Can you effectively communicate with your teammates at the same time that you're doing all these things? And
that's why they train.
People, it's just like you don't, that people see these moments and they don't understand all of the things that encompass what goes along with that moment. It isn't just this one snippet where it's like, oh, now I grab the gun. It's like, no, how do you get into that position? How do you take advantage of that situation? They lack that expertise and that knowledge, and it gives them an amount of hubris because, oh, it doesn't exist, so it doesn't exist. They think that because they don't know about it, that it doesn't factor in, but it does. So, yeah.
Drex, military guys, right?
Yep.
There's a reason they all train, and they all train the same way. Because when shit hits the fan, you go back to your training. And you need to know that the guy in front of you is going to act the same way you are and the same way as the guy behind you. You're all on the same page.
Ironically enough, that's actually a form of social engineering. The social engineering in this case is to basically, like any social engineering, it's designed to overwhelm your instinct and biology, right? Because let's face it, human beings, like most mammals, are designed to do a very simple dual function. They go toward pleasure, right? Things that make them feel good, and they go away from pain, right? That's why when shit hits the fan, most people are like, oh, fuck that. Last I saw today, 836,000 Ukrainians have left the country, right? See, why are they leaving, Tim? Because shit got real, right?
Yeah.
They are
not fighting.
No one's going to Ukraine unless they're saying, yeah, I want to shoot some Soviets. Yeah, you say that, though, right?
You say that till that first shell lands, man. You feel that Tim, explosion in your chest?
There's not 836,000 people going into the Ukraine. You see what I'm saying?
God, no.
Yeah, maybe there's 10,000, maybe even that's.
And there are legit sociopaths who can function even without training.
Yep.
Maybe there's some of them. I don't know. Maybe Ken would know more about that. But Vincent, I have a question for you before we let you go, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. I've seen on Reddit that guys will justify pegging because of homosexuality in the animal kingdom. Can you comment on why animals perform homosexuality and whether or not you can pull that across to justify getting pegged?
Well, the unfortunate reality, and this again, it ruffles people's feathers because it's just true and they don't want to accept it. But like when we see like goats, for example, who become homosexual, or we see homosexual and more social animals, it's often either a sign of a mental illness, like a tumor growth in the brain that causes the male sheep to prefer other males, or it's a lack of females. So it's like, with gorillas, if a bachelor group of gorillas has no females and there are no females around, they can't get them, they will engage in sporadic homosexual behavior. But this isn't from anything else than perhaps like maybe it's a bonding mechanism. We don't know. It could be a form of domination. But I think as it applies to humans, it's just like, bro, you're not straight. Let's just get it. Let's just be clear. you're not straight. It's like the what is that Law and Order clip where it's like,
oh yeah,
that means
I
you're
am
gay.
not gay. I have sex with men in relationships with women. It means you're gay.
It's like, man, you can't be over here like dipping on bad dragons and especially filming it and producing it. I don't know. Pegging to me, I don't know any woman who'd respect a man after pegging them, like legitimate.
None.
Like,
We've
once
asked
you
you.
put that switch on, you can't switch it off. Like your woman, oh yeah, you could be like dominant, sub, whatever in the bedroom, but you can't unfuck your ass, bro. Like you can't, have your girl like forget pounding your cheeks on live stream. I don't think that's something that's reversible in the relationship. But
Well, and that's the thing too. Like,
69.
so you said it's about asserting dominance, right? So the animal who got pegged, that's not the one that the females are gonna breed with. No, because that's the beta. Well, that's the beta, right?
They can't respect it. They can't. Women cannot respect you if you are in a female position. Here's the thing. It's biology.
We see that in dogs, right? Male dogs will just hump another male dog to assert dominance over it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're competing for a female, which one is which male is that?
Yeah, the female will grab the one who is in the dominant position. Like women will tell you this. Like here's the thing. For women don't tend to engage with males who are into other males like that in general. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But like, here's the thing. If she does choose to, guess which one she's more likely than not to not want to deal with? It's the bottom, right? Like women are already kind of like funny about you dealing with, dude on dude action, but they're really funny about you being the bottom. It's like, if you have to do that, can you at least be the top? You see what I'm saying? Like, at least be the top. Don't be the bottom.
Speaking of which, I saw the texts you shared in the Not Safe for Humans about that guy. Oh my god, we gotta cover that in a live chat sometime.
I will let you out here with this. Is there any example of cuckoldry where the guy is actually like watching in the animal kingdom that's not human? Where a guy is like I'm so emasculated, I'm gonna sit here and let another male come in and just while I sit here and go get him berry snacks and bananas and fucking some minced meat or something.
I mean, there are examples where subordinate males will help other males reproduce. I think in certain like Birds of Paradise or something, like there's the beta and the alpha male who like they would have a dance routine. And
is it the cockatoo? I'm sorry, that was a cheap joke.
Oh, that's horrible.
But no, I don't think there's anything I from my experience besides I think that okay, there's a difference between promiscuous animals that'll just mate with any female. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm just gonna wait my turn. But it's always a train. It's not like the male is just over here like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna hold her legs while you screw her or whatever, just so I can get a better look. I think cuckoldry is just, in my opinion, closeted homosexuality mixed with porn addiction. It's like guys who can't get off unless they're watching.
Hey Tim, you saw the text, right? Hey, no, Busta, on some real shit. I got hit up. I shit you not, this morning, right, from a Latino couple, and the dude was doing this whole like he's like trying to like bargain with me, like no, bro. Don't worry about the basically. Don't worry that the profile says that the male half is bi-curious. There's no such thing as bi-curious. Men don't have curiosity in terms of their sexuality. Women do, men don't. So if a dude is sitting there going, looking at another dude like, man, I sure would like to get me some of them man cheeks, right? It's because no, bro, you are what you are. It means you're gay. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And the thing is that I showed everybody in my Discord is I said, Busta, these dudes will sit there and try to like somehow like justify it in their mind, right? Like, no, it's cool. I'm just there to watch. Well, what is it that you're watching though? You see what I'm saying? So you want 3 to 4 hung dudes to smash your wife. We all know the truth. This is how this works, Busta. The dude is there to watch the dudes, right? The woman deep down in her mind knows she cannot respect a guy who's like basically he's a cuck. She's biologically incapable of respecting him, right? When she says, no, I love him, you and I both know what that means, right? When women say I love, what they're saying is, I appreciate what you provide in this moment. So what she's appreciating is he allows her to just smash other dudes, right?
Yeah, and I've never seen a relationship, one of those relationships that's ever lasted.
Never.
I mean, people can bring up whatever anecdote they want. I've seen how polyamorous relationships in my own experience have turned out. I've seen how guys are like, oh yeah, we have an open relationship. I'm like, that means you have no relationship, homie. And none of those relationships ever worked out in the long run. And I'm old enough to where I can look back on some of these guys who are like in their late teens and early 20s thinking that they could do this. And I'm like, well, I guess it's better than having a married wife, but every single one of those guys, it's like, it's not just losing respect of the woman. It's like you're losing respect of your peers. And I think that humiliation is what gets them off too. But it's the weirdest and dumbest sexual fetish because I've never seen any guy be able to bounce back from that. It's like, you can't cuck out and then be like, oh, now I'm going to be the big manly figure. The woman's just going to laugh at you. And I think once you lose respect in a relationship, like you said, going back, like what was the biggest thing that men and women had with each other when you look at the Bible, when you look at older texts, it was respect. And how are you going to respect a man who's going to bend over and not even let him, like, what, is he going to lick the balls and clean off the shaft? Like, you see how
there's dudes on clean, like,
they're obviously.
So Busta, there's couples where it explicitly says my little cuck subby hub is a he's cleanup duty and shit, right? Here's the thing. And this is why this is so important. I always hammer this home. I said, do you know how you know if what you say is real or bullshit? This is the simplest thing. Tim, we've talked about this. Hey, Tim, how many fucking cucks have ever shown their face on anyone's stream and be like, yeah, I'm a cuck. You see what I'm saying? Like openly talked about it, right? Because remember, they talk about how proud they are. They're so okay with it, right?
Yeah.
But how come they never show? Remember, Nick was going to have a cuck on, right?
And he backed out.
They never show their face. They always flake, right?
Yeah.
Now watch this.
Someone put Fleece Johnson in the chat.
You're right. Now, Busta, let me ask you this though: does the bull ever hide his face or not want to be on camera?
Matt from Tinder, get on here.
The bull is always proud to be the bull, right? Because here's the thing: how are you going to disrespect the bull, right? Oh no, bro, you're lame. Lame for what? Cucking and fucking bitches. Like the bull can always look in the mirror and be proud of himself, right? It's the cuck who's going to be like, I hate myself. That's why he never wants to be on camera. He never wants to think about it. Bus, if you're out drinking with your bros, right? You guys are just out hanging out. It's easy for a guy to admit he's a bull, right? Because no one's going to shame him. Oh yeah, man, I smashed this chick. Yeah, the dude was just sitting in the corner with a snack tray. That's easy. But you're never going to be the guy who openly says, I hold the snack tray while some dude plows my wife.
No, they always cover it up and say it's a poly relationship. Or
Yeah. Oh, you know,
right? They're covering it up.
Yeah. And Busta, what happens? Oh, you're in an open relationship? Oh, yeah, so you get other chicks? Oh, yeah, man. Anytime I want to, man. My wife gets other guys and I can get other women. He doesn't tell you he never has any other women, right? I don't.
That means you don't.
It's clear when they don't. It's very clear when they don't. Like, because guys can talk all kinds of shit. Like, oh no, bro. It's like, she does her thing, I do mine. Whoop de whoop. I'm like, bro, you talk about how you get no pussy.
That's how HMT start.
Anybody.
Oh no, Tim.
That's how an HMT starts.
Hold on, Tim. You saw Boogie Nights, right? You ever see that movie?
Nope.
Did you ever see Boogie Nights, Busta? One of the most important movies to ever watch.
Boogie Nights.
With
I
Mark
believe
Mark.
I watched when I was like 10 years old.
Dude, okay. Do you remember William H. Macy's character? He's the cuck, right?
Oh,
you remember him?
Yeah.
Hey, Tim.
Oh.
Look up Boogie Nights and just look up like William H. Macy or something, and the scene will show up. Tim, he goes full HMT. The whole I'm not joking. The whole movie
Nick to do a watch party on it.
The whole movie, he's getting cucked, right? Look,
yeah.
Tim. She literally is getting she's getting plowed in the driveway. And like throughout the movie, just random dudes smashing. But eventually he puts on the hockey mask. But yeah, Busta, thanks for coming on. And man, great show.
We got a couple of emails. And then Drex, I need you for 5 minutes after we kill the recording, just for scheduling. All right. First email is our frequent emailer asking, speaking of homosexuality, asking about lesbians that don't exist. There'll be chicks that say they're a lesbian in their bio, but there's a catch. It'll say something like, I'm a lesbian, but I would go hetero for insert male celebrity here. She says, what is up with that?
Hold on. You're asking about the chick being with lesbian, like wanting to be.
Oh,
with
no, she's asking that women she finds on social sites like Tumblr or Twitter will have lesbian in their bio, but then they have I'm a lesbian, but I would go hetero for insert male celebrity.
But women's sexuality, in terms of humans, is fluid, right? That's why, Busta, we talked about this. There are no lesbians in the human species. There are no lesbians because you and I both know when shit hits the fan, like in Ukraine. Hey, watch this. Hey, Busta, I want you to tell me how many lesbians are in the Ukraine right now. Go ahead, tell me.
That'd be a hard one to estimate. I'm thinking exactly 0.
Yep. When shit hits the fan, here's the thing: women aren't going to join up with other women because a woman's not going to provide provision and protection. And to extract resources, women are biologically selfish and solipsistic. They're not going to share shit. Men do that. Men are sacrificial. So yeah, I don't know if you know about this, Buster. It's very common that these so-called lesbians are on websites looking for the D. That's very common. I would go hetero. No.
So-called lesbians.
Oh, say it again.
I have friends that have smashed so-called lesbians.
Oh yeah,
I know former lesbians that are now saying that they're bisexual or whatever.
Yep.
It goes both ways. Because from what I can see, it's, I don't know, for some women, they just get the options. They're like, oh, I'm done with men or whatever. They have a bunch of baggage and they just go lesbian or they become a bisexual. But most of the time, it's the polar opposite. It's these women who are lesbian and, they finally find a guy who's interested in them for some reason. And they suddenly switch sides. It's like most lesbians, at least in my experience, are lesbian either because they want to be more masculine and think that in order to become more masculine, they should date chicks, or they're women who are preyed upon by other lesbians when they're the most vulnerable and then fed all this bullshit like, oh, no, you really are actually attracted to women. I can tell because of this and this and this. So it's a little bit of predation combined with a little bit of confusion combined with a little bit of hedonism. And I don't know. Like, at least to me, I've seen so many people flip-flop sides that if you tell me you were born lesbian, I'd probably laugh in your face at this point.
No, I got 2 quick questions for you, though. Are there lesbians in the animal kingdom? And then the other question I have is, I just forgot it. It's on my mind. But answer that first question. I'll see if I can remember the second one. Lesbians in the animal kingdom.
Lesbians in the animal kingdom. Unless it's a case of like... Unless it's a case of polymorphism where the female becomes a male through some process where, there's not enough males and there needs to become, the female becomes a male essentially through like a hormonal cascade that changes their physiology.
German Shepherds.
You don't see it. Yeah. You just don't see it. You don't see women because think about it. If women in nature, the amount of investment they have to have just to carry offspring, no matter what the method is, it's like, why would you waste your energy, time, and resources trying to pair with other women? You don't see it. I think even in human society, lesbianism is just, I don't know, people can catch feelings for whomever, but I don't think you have lesbians in societies that are more, I guess, rough around the edges. You don't get,
third world countries. Third world countries don't have an influx of lesbians, right? Oh, I do remember the little mini question I had for you. It was, what about guys flip-flopping, right? You just said that you've seen women who are saying I'm lesbian, and then all of a sudden they're flip-flopping, saying I'm bi and I'm straight. You don't really see that with dudes so much, do you? A guy be like, oh yeah, I'm straight, bro. Oh, now I'm gay, bro. Now I'm bi. I'm back to straight.
Yeah, Shaft isn't going out and smashing a woman tomorrow night.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's just because women are in denial of of being lesbian. There are some women out there who I think will never date a man. They could have a strong argument for being lesbian forever. They're just not interested in men. But that's not the majority of lesbians I've met. I think, there are those guys who are like, oh, yeah, it's like maybe like a guy who like Fleece Johnson who finally he can finally get some pussy or something.
Drex, I gave someone nightmares because I introduced him to the Fleece Johnson story. And he's like, I legit had a nightmare that night, man. Something got knocked over my house last night, and I was like, oh, he's coming for my cheeks.
Dude, if you're not a dude who can like realistically defend yourself, especially in a prison environment, Fleece he's like a nightmare. He's basically like
he's the zombie.
He's like an end boss in a video game, right? Because the idea that, and think about it, Busta, most dudes who commit crimes, right? They aren't the biggest, baddest guy while they're on the street, right? And then remember, they don't build up that body until they're in prison. So imagine you're fresh meat, and Fleece walks up to you saying, "I like you and I want you." Now we can do this the easy way, we can do it the hard way. The choice is yours. Okay, now what if? Now let's just be honest, Busta. What if you're 5'9", 155? What are you gonna do against Fleece, right? A guy who's not the biggest dude, he's not some tough guy. He got involved in maybe, he robbed like a liquor store. Maybe he got caught up with some other guys, right? And he's doing hard time.
Missed his child support.
Now he's locked up with a fucking cheap taken savage, right?
Yeah.
Now what do you do? Like, he would be terrified.
All right, I want to roll through this.
In my case, I learned martial arts. Like, that's basically me to a T. I'm not even 155. So I've been doing martial arts for 15 years and learning to defend myself against many times larger opponents. But these guys on the street can't fight. Everybody's watched these videos. Everybody's watched World Star. Everybody's, seen these videos of how these dudes fight. I'm like, you're not going to be able to take somebody who has been in more fights than you've probably been on dates and expect to come out on top. Like, this is a guy where rape is his hobby. Like, raping is his hobby. Like, his hobby is man-ass wrangling. He is a A1 man-ass wrangler.
Yep.
He's in that pin for way longer than 8 seconds, homie.
I like
You're not going to fuck him off. You got to be prepared.
Could you imagine Fleece's Tinder bio?
Oh,
My hobbies include booty. Booty's more important than drinking water.
it's more important than drinking water. Like, dude, they talked. They actually had a number on the amount of cheeks he took while he was incarcerated. It was like 180 something. I'm like, bro, like, that's a lot of dudes, though. I mean, Tim, think about it.
Can you imagine if he had a trophy for each one of those cheeks?
Oh man, oh.
Like a taxidermy just puts the cheeks up on his cell. Those cheeks I took in '82. He was a screamer.
Tim, I got something for you. For the dude that you said watch Fleece, I got something for you. Look up, I think it's a video called like Scariest Inmate Ever, right? It's this jet black African dude, right? And no bullshit, no matter what the situation is, right? The dude looks completely crazy. The guy's like this. So, because he has an interview, right? He's like, what if a guy, I don't know, like, he just make up something, right? Like he accidentally scuffed your puma. He goes like this, I killed him. Tim, anything. Like, he is like this dude is a complete savage. Like, so find that
Send
video
him to Ukraine.
guy. Oh yeah.
He do fine.
These, man, look, don't end up in prison, man. Protect your cheeks, gentlemen.
Yeah. All right. Let me roll through this email because we've been going 2 hours now. Holy shit. Drex, how does this keep happening?
Dude, we have too much fun.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna roll through this one real quick. It's like a multi-part question. The first one's actually directed at me about the whole trucker stuff. Essentially, he's just asking, I'm from an East African country, and we have more freedom than Canadians. So what do you think that's going to happen? Is there going to be some change to the Constitution, or Canadians just going to move to Alberta and separate ourselves? What's the likelihood of violence breaking out? The question to violence is, or the answer to the violence question is no. We're too polite for that. Also, no to the constitutional amendment. It's too difficult to amend our constitution. Drex, in the U.S., I think it's 50% of the states agree to amend the constitution. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Which is really hard, right?
Yeah, it's not easy, man.
In Canada, it's 7 out of 10 provinces.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. So, and then will Canadians move to Alberta and separate yourselves? No, not really. People move provinces for economic reasons, not because of political reasons. The proof is just, whenever there's a major change in government at the provincial level, there's not this sudden exodus of people that go to a different province with different politics. No, it's when oil prices crash. It's when manufacturing crashes. That's when you see people move. So no, and no. Second question is, do you see an individualized version of an ESG score? And how likely is it to spread throughout the world? ESG score. Isn't that like environmental safety or environmental emissions?
I haven't.
I don't know what an
I've heard of
ESG
the
score
ESG.
is.
I'm going to Google it. ESG score. Let me see.
Yeah, because I know that most places, either in America or Europe, require like the EIA or ECIA process.
All right, here it is right here. It says environmental, social, and governance. An ESG rating measures a company's exposure to long-term environmental, social, and governance risks. These
Yeah.
risks, involving issues such as energy efficiency, worker safety, and board independence, have financial implications, but they are often not highlighted during traditional financial reviews. So the question was what again now?
Yeah,
About
so
this?
will you see an individualized version of an ESG score? So I recall taking something in marketing that was similar to this. So essentially, it's trying to measure the financial impact of things that don't have financial value attached to them. So environmental, social, and governance. Well, governance is the easy one, right? The carbon tax.
Yep.
Okay. We don't know what a carbon tax costs because they haven't passed the law yet. But you can quantify the risk when Biden took office that there was going to be a carbon tax on your company. So that's what that is. Can you individualize that score? So Drex, are you going to have a Governor Waltz risk score?
No, I believe we're there now, and I'm sure Busta, when you were, I think you said you were over in Germany, or at least you studied German. You're fully aware that the next step in the globalist agenda will be full on social credit, right? That's why you get taken off of social media platforms for wrong think, i.e., 1984, right? That it will come.
I mean,
Yeah, it's coming. Like full on social credit.
And then, do you think crypto and DeFi will be the alternative to big finance and big tech? So DeFi is decentralized.
Yeah. There's like centralized banks are here to stay, and as you saw with the trucker convoy, what stops the government from just going after your shit? Oh, you try to trade some crypto? You try to make some moves? We're gonna go after you, dude.
And they could have done one worse. They could have done one worse. If they tried that shit in the U.S., they'd just haul your ass down to Guantanamo. All right, what's your Bitcoin wallet?
Yep.
They
can extort.
I've got the pipe wrench on your left testicle. You tell me your Bitcoin wallet, or else.
Well, last I heard, Trudeau was they were like threatened to like put family members in prison, right?
Oh well, they were going to take kids away.
Kids away.
Call CPS.
Yeah. There's okay. So watch this, Buster. If you say, "Oh, I won't do X, Y, and Z," right? Everyone knows how to break men. You go after what they covet, right? In order to go after women, you go after them specifically. To hurt men, you go after what they love. So all they're gonna do is just go after your, family, right? I'm just gonna go after your family. Give us what we want, and then men will break. That's how you break men.
Yeah, I mean but my opinion on that is that Canadians, if they're in that situation, if Americans are in that situations, or Europeans in general, like Germans with their green pass, and all of this literal tracking of your movement that's just been normalized in these recent, just I guess, years. It's just bizarre to me that this has gone on for this long. But what we're seeing is a normalization to just complete authoritarianism, like telling you how to dress in terms of what to put on your face, like covering yourself and going through all these regulations, like needing vaccines to work. But I mean, this is a manifestation of that. This is people kind of fighting back against authoritarian regulation, and they think that they can use authoritarian regulation to kind of get out of it. And that's what I think is so funny about the situation. That okay, we're taking attention off of all of this because of what's happening in the Ukraine, but in truth, they might try to implement this. The key word is try. But the way that men avoid having the government take advantage of them is by staying strapped, stacking precious metals, food, ammo, cargo, everything that you can get your hands on, everything from jugs of water to MREs to every gun that you could possibly get your hands on, and threatening basically a violent overthrow of whatever entity is trying to oppress you. There's a precedent, at least in America, 1776, where people got fed up. It's like, it's enough of taxes, it's enough of oppression, it's enough of lack of representation in their own government and the goings on of their own country. And people rose up. People took things into their own hands because a government is not representative of itself. It's representative of the people. And people can have the choice basically to come together and be like, okay, we can either get trampled on for the foreseeable future and pass this on to our kids and let them fight it out, or we can make the decision ourselves to do something about it. So,
well, yeah, this conversation is going to go on another hour and a half.
Oh, don't worry, we'll definitely get you back in.
We'll definitely have you back, and we can cover this some other day.
For sure.
All right. Last two on this email. I love these multi-question emails. In the modern world, there's no rite of passage, but the closest thing to being in tough conditions is participating in contact sports like rugby and martial arts. How can a modern man be more resilient? Do you just send the teenage boys to boot camp or what?
I think martial arts is a good one. Yeah, you actually have to do it.
Learn to fight.
Well, yeah, it's just like his thing. The problem is getting into traditionally masculine involvements and altercations can land you in jail now, right? Like their kids are catching cases. Yeah, or shot. Like I mean, kids are catching cases now. Like I mean, you get into Busta, you can get into a fight like in elementary schools and even middle schools, and you catch cases.
Yep,
kids. So yeah, it's tough. Sports, I think, is a great one though. Like no matter where you are in the world, man, sports teaches you a lot more about life than the sport.
Especially the contact sports. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, I guess rugby's popular in Africa, so I guess that's why. But up here in Canada, man, every kid does hockey. And if your parents can't afford to put you or they're too stupid to put you in ice hockey, then you do road hockey or field hockey, or literally you grab one of those little mini sticks you get from McDonald's or Tim Hortons and you slap a rolled up pair of socks down the hallway. That's the rite of passage of a Canadian kid.
Yeah, and the only reason I show martial arts is because from my own experience, seeing brothers who did full contact sports, I feel like it's less hard on your body. Like for me, I feel like I have a lot more flexibility and a lot less aches and pains than, like I said, the offensive tackle friends that I have who messed up their knees and backs and shoulders by doing full contact sports, throughout their adolescence. So it's good. I think contact sports, especially in terms of teamwork, in terms of camaraderie, really, really is awesome. And I did enjoy doing contact sports, but I think learning and knowing how to fight has given me a confidence that, especially as being like a really small kid growing up, it gave me the confidence to carry myself basically around anywhere and not really have to be afraid. Because, I mean, like, if I'm going to catch a case, it's like, okay, a case is better than being dead. It's better than getting clocked and then hitting my head on the ground and dying instead of being able to put my hands up and defend myself. So it's like, I can turn deadly. Even a schoolyard scuffle. It's like, yeah, you might catch a case, but, bro, you trip on a rock or you can $1 million baby yourself on a bench or something. You don't know, bro. Your family's going to be crying, wondering if they should pull the plug or not, when in reality, if you just learned how to butterfly step or something, you wouldn't even be in that situation. So there are times where I knew if I didn't know how to fight, that I would have really gotten my ass whooped. And because I knew how to fight, I didn't get my ass whooped. So there's that. And I didn't catch a case, luckily. My record's clean. But I think that's key.
Well, it's something that a father and a son can bond over because – Drex, if mom drops you off at karate, are you going to try anything on her? Right?
Yeah,
is she gonna let you practice karate?
Women
but your dad will put up the hands and be like, "All right, hit my hands."
Women just don't bond over physical violence and physical contact.
No, it's not the way they're built. It's against their nature.
Yeah, they're not built like that. Like, if you're around, if you have a bunch of, especially sons, like a prime example, look at the Gronkowskis, right? Huge kids, huge.
Yes.
Well, go listen to their parents describe what their childhood was like, right? They're extremely rough and tumble kids because that's just how boys are built, especially when you give them, you give them free reign to be what they are, right? And by the time they grow up to be grown men, Rob Gronkowski does not go around with his brothers picking fights. They just don't do that, right? Because you understand the responsibility of being someone who's very large, or if you're in martial arts or boxing, you understand, I'm a lethal weapon, so I'm not going to go look for fights. The guys who look for fights are dudes who are fucking bitch made, have a couple of drinks in them and need liquid courage, right? And they're beta as fuck. That's who picks fights. It's not the guy who knows. Dudes who know how to fight don't pick fights. Yeah.
Drex and I have the exact same reaction to someone who's trying to pick a fight with us at a bar. Just turn away. Fuck it. I don't want to deal with you. Come on, guys. Let's go to another place. Because you don't want to start fights. You don't want to get into fights. right?
Mhm.
Now, Drex and I are the opposite ends of the size spectrum, right? I'm just a little bit taller than Ethan Ralph. And of course, Drex is a huge guy. People pick fights with Drex. Small guys like me pick fights with Drex to prove themselves, right?
Yeah. Well,
So you
when
got
it's
this
the
little,
system,
fucking 5'8" guy running his mouth, right? And you're just like, get out of here, man. I'm out.
let's face it. The reason why, and I'm sure Busta, you've seen this, right? Because I've talked about this on Nick's show. I got put at a disadvantage early in life when my mom had to sit me down when I was about to bash this kid's face in, who's running his fucking mouth, right? And she sat me down. She goes, "You have to understand how you are perceived by the world around you, right?" She's like, "You are physically imposing," which means they don't want to hear about you saying like, "Oh, hey, this guy threatened me, so I went ahead and neutralized the threat." No, they don't want to hear that. No one roots for Goliath, right? No one cares about Goliath. No one loves Goliath, right? Everywhere I go, I'm the physical threat, right? You're a big black guy. So what ends up happening is, like Tim was saying, the little dude will come pick a fight with me. But you and I both know, Buster, if I beat this dude down, I stop a bone out his fucking ass, right? Who goes to jail? I do.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, I was defending myself. See, the little guy is allowed to say that. I'm
Yep.
not. See, you see where that double standard comes? I'm like, oh, dude, I was here minding my own business. I'm trying to stay out of trouble, but people are constantly testing me. And people say that's okay, right?
Yep.
It's okay for someone to just say whatever.
Yeah, it's a different reason, but it's the same result. Both of us turn away. Because, yes, I have been in real fights before. I've been stabbed before. I do know, turn the fuck away. It ain't worth it.
Well, I think,
and I'm 32 years old now too. Like that's the other thing too, Drex. Right? Wait, you're 40? No, you're 40 yet.
39.
Yeah.
All tough guy shit goes all the way. Nick and I have talked about this. So there's a certain point. I mean, like that point came pretty early with me because of my physical size, but like it came pretty early where I was like this. Not only am I avoiding fights at all costs. Do you know what else I started avoiding? I started avoiding the chance, the opportunity to get into a fight. So
the verbal confrontation.
Not even just like prime example. Hey Tim, you coming to this party tonight, man? It's gonna be jumping. You're like, yeah, no.
There's gonna be 18 drunk guys.
Yeah, drunk dudes plus females, and you see, like you would think that through ahead of time, right? Like, because Busta, you and I both know there are environments that you know right now that could get out of hand. Martial arts trainer, not something could go wrong, right? You could get knifed, shot, like you said earlier. Anything could happen. So you start to you minimize all of the possibilities that you would be in those scenarios, right? Like,
take less risks.
Yeah, you take less risks. You're like, no, look, man, Drex, man, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna go to Nick's house.
There were two fights in Ybor City, right?
Yep.
One guy got legit shanked, and then someone tried picking a fight with Ralph.
Yep. Yeah, I missed the shank literally by so I went to the bathroom, right? Nothing happened all night at this place, right? Other than just general degeneracy. No bullshit, Busta. In the time it took me to go to the bathroom, wash my hands, help the old lady who's the staff move a bench in that small window of time. After I walked back out, I got kicked out along with everyone else. I'm like, what the fuck happened? And then a dude showed me there's a pool of blood on the ground. In that small window, someone got shanked. So it happens that quick.
Yeah. And what I mean, how often do you go to a bar otherwise? When
As a non-drinker, I never go to bars ever.
Yeah.
And I told you, I will not go to bars or clubs. I will not do it. I'm too
All
big
right.
of a
Last question from this guy, and then we'll let you out of here. He says the thought of eating booty makes him recoil. Do you put like maple syrup flavored lube on her ass?
What the guy say in the prison documentary? It's jelly. No, look. Here's what's sad. These hoes are so nasty and ratchet now. We saw happen to Val Kilmer. Trick Daddy said this. He goes, "It's safer to eat booty than pussy now." Busta.
Oh,
these bitches are that ratchet, man. I'm just keeping it real. It's gotten that bad, man.
Have you ever cucked a lesbian?
Not that I can think of. I don't think
like
so.
she was watching in Snack Trade while you smashed her girlfriend.
No, you don't. I'm sure it'll get asked at some point. Like, a woman will be like, "Oh, I want to see my girl get smashed," or something. But like, I know women, and women aren't going to let a chick get smashed without them joining in the action. They can't help themselves.
Yeah, okay. That was an odd question. I mean, I didn't even think it was possible to cuck a lesbian.
Yeah, because I mean,
Anyways.
they're just gonna join in. Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Unless they're Butch. It's like,
Yeah, that was a 3-way. Or in a 2.5, depending on how tall she is. All right, that's all I got from that emailer. I've got something I can do next week. He says he can't wait for episode 69 with Duke and Warstarter.
Oh, it's gonna be fun, man.
All right, well, let's close out the show. Guys, you know how to find us. You know how to support us. We're on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals, all under the name Migtown Podcast. You can find all the links on our website, Migtown.show/about. Don't forget to check out our shop, Migtown.show/shop. You know how to find us and support us. Until next time, stay frosty.
Oh, wait, Busta, shill your shit.
Oh, fuck, yeah, I forgot. Oh, I screwed you out of that, too, from Valen-crimes Day. I did not put a link to your stuff. So, yeah, send me a link, email or text when you're done, and I can put it on the description.
Yeah, I'll just link one of my first videos. But yeah, so my channel is now named Busta Von Nuts. So Busta BUSTA VONNUTZ. And yeah, I basically just, like I said earlier, I kind of go through history, like geologic time, and kind of just sort of critique modern scientific literature and opinions on those subjects. And kind of just pointing out how modern speculation and conjecture aren't necessarily prescriptive or even, reflective of the truth, but rather just the individual opinions of scientists who think they know better. So, no matter what people say, no matter what I say, no matter what, so-called experts or professionals say, always keep in mind that these people are human too. They're people too. They make mistakes. They get ahead of themselves and think that they know more than they really do. And I think it's just important to stay humble. So that's basically my channel. If people are interested.
All right.
God damn, I can't. Kings.